Hello and welcome to episode 183 of The Imperial Truth. I'm Greg. Joining me as ever is Mr. Howard. Hello, Howard.
Hello, Greg. How are you doing? You're right.
Warm.
Yeah. It turns out
Warm.
when we have a summer,
Warm.
we've gone from 0 to 60.
And I'm just going to say this, right? Before the Aussies and the Americans jump on and say it's not warm, whatever. There's been a lot of talk about this recently and how different countries, different heats. Like a lot of people don't realise how north we are compared to parts of America and all that. But what gets it for me is when one of the great West Indian cricketers, I think it might have been Michael Holding, was asked like what the most uncomfortable cricketing times he's had, like which days have been really hard. He states being in an English summer, a specific English summer, as one of them, where just a combination of the humidity and other stuff and whatever as being really hard. When a West Indian saying it was really hot, like it can happen here.
I
We
did
just don't
see
have the
a
infrastructure for it.
exactly that article. There was an article that said exactly the same thing. A much longer article. It was a Twitter thread
Yeah.
from an American who had lived in various very hot parts of the US, and he said people don't realise, as you say, exactly how north it is. Like if you go across, it's like the same parts as northerly parts of Canada. It's like it's only this bit, and it's incredibly humid, which also makes it a deeply.
What
And all
makes
our
me laugh,
buildings are designed to keep heat in.
yeah, you get these people say, "Oh, it's not like this, California and blah blah blah," and you're like, "Yeah, and I've seen Californians over here in um for weekenders actually," and I was like, "God, it's a really chilled night," and I'm, really for October November, I'm out in a t-shirt and they're in a, almost a ski jacket, so it's almost like we live in different environments and we're used to them,
Yeah,
and we're
certainly.
built up for them,
Certainly,
so
our infrastructure is not designed for
no,
temperature. And why would it? Why would you design things
for two
for
weeks.
2 weeks of the year max?
Yeah,
At the
well,
max,
I mean, they might look to do it more and more as we get
yeah.
hotter and hotter temperatures. But there's a reason I like living in the UK because normally we don't get too hot and normally we don't get too cold and we don't get
Also, seasonality is quite a nice thing. Friends of mine who moved over
can be.
to Malaysia
Yeah.
did not particularly enjoy the sort of continual, just one
Oh
season
right.
mostly all the way around with the occasional variation. They were like, I really miss it being really cold in the winter and really hot in the summer. They were
And I'm
enjoy.
sure there's plenty
This
of
is this is a tangent even for us.
yeah, I was about to say that. I'm sure there's plenty of people who love the fact that it doesn't change in Malaysia as well. Like we're all
Yes.
different. We all live in different places. It's way too hot over here for us. Particularly me. I'm a very white boy, who's slightly overweight. Say slightly, and whose two bedrooms absorb sun in the back of their house. So, it's 10 degrees hotter in my bedroom than it is outside,
Oh my god.
at 8 o'clock at night. So it is what it is. So
Main thing is though, it's affecting the consistency of my paint. I
well, that is
mean,
it, right? It's when you're,
it's
I
messing
know
me up.
Tommy Saul was he on the painting phase and he hates a wet palette. But
Oh, I want to watch that episode. Funnily enough, I'm using a wet palette at the moment,
I've
and
heard him
I'm
talk about it
wondering,
before.
I'm wondering if it's one of these things because the guys at Siege were also extolling the virtues of the Tupperware. So okay,
Right.
that's still using a wet palette, but not using a commercial one,
Oh,
using a home brand. But I'd like to watch that one about that. Do you remember broadly what the topic was, other
I
than
haven't. I know. I
they're a
haven't
bit
watched
crap?
it.
Oh, okay.
I haven't watched it. No, no, I've heard him talk about it somewhere else. Was he at Blood and Glory? It was someone like him, certainly had the same thing. Basically, you're introducing a lack of control over the paint consistency with the wet palette because you,
Okay.
you, you can't control exactly how much water's mixing in the paint. I get
Okay.
it. Fair enough. Fair play. Most of us aren't painting to that level,
No.
so I don't care. Also, it means I'm not wasting paint because I can come back to it. And as a very slow painter, that is a big thing. Anyway,
I have witnessed that, listeners. He is indeed a slow painter.
big time. Before we do any of this, right at the start of the show, Element Games for all your hobby goodness.
Oh
If you're
yeah.
buying Skaven Tide, I don't know if they've got any left,
Oh
but they'll
yes,
they'll
that's
have.
been in high demand, doesn't it? Looking at the way people have, well, or rather allocations that have been going around. So yeah, better to go sooner rather than later if you're trying to seek that out.
Yeah, or there's a couple of weeks later they'll release the books and all that stuff as well. We've just had a load of heresy stuff drop. Who knows where they are with the with the reveals, the recent reveals, and how close we are. But whatever it is, you can get it at Element. You can use our code to support the show, and you can use our crystal codes, which are also
Oh
in the show
yes,
notes
let's forget about
as
those.
well.
Yes,
If you want to give your bonus crystals, get your bonus crystals and give Howard or myself them. Feel free. If not, give them to your best mate. You know, that's what I do. Me and my best mate basically share things. So I think he gets a slightly better deal of it than I do. I think I buy a little bit more from Element than he does. But hey, it is what it is.
they do also, which is often forget, is some of the ancillary stuff that they have. Which I mean, for example, they stock the Daylight Company lamps. Um, I was looking around for something like that to try and upgrade my experience as part of an upcoming birthday thing, and they have them, slightly less, actually quite a bit less than going direct with stuff like that, which is
Have
always worth sort of looking around.
I'm just trying to think. These villainy inks. So these are the new ones that.
Yes, and they
So
might even be
they,
exclusive. I'm not 100% certain on
right,
that.
they're
They
quite.
certainly have them.
They're not cheap, are they? But there's a lot
They
of
are not.
chat about them.
They are. They're not the most user friendly, but once you get the hang of them, I think they
Right.
are supposed to be very exciting. But they are not, from the reviews I read, because I considered getting a set of those and had a look, and I haven't jumped in yet because I've heard they have their own set of challenges. But
Cool.
yes, they do them. So one to explore. As I say, I haven't seen anywhere really that's got as good a range as Element have when it comes to all the different paint and hobby products. They stock everything.
Yeah, and there's always going to be one or two people who get a bad experience with any company at any point. But I was talking to someone who's newer in the hobby, and was talking about using uh, Element. And they were like, "I use these people and these people," and I'm like, "Yeah, okay. I mean, one of those names you've mentioned have have a nickname that sounds almost exactly the same as their name, and are have been known when you have a like it's fine until you have a problem, and then when you have a problem, they're a real problem. That kind of thing. Whereas, we're I think with Element, almost any problem I've had's been resolved pretty quickly and to my satisfaction. So
Yeah, which is important with this. Well, important. It's important when it's important. When it
yeah,
happens, you
absolutely. It
want it
doesn't
to be
it
good.
doesn't happen
Yeah.
that often. That and as I say, one of the big things for them is often get the stuff on the Saturday of release. They have a sales section in Element as well. Obviously, stuff that doesn't shift quite as quick and or is coming up to out of date and all that kind of thing. But the Solar Auxilia Dracosans are in there at
Ooh,
£42.75. So they're £57 normally. So
not
basically, it's
bad.
14 quid off. It's not bad. There's some Tomb Kings in there and stuff. Lots. That's
Yeah,
Element. So, Howard, what have you been doing
yeah.
any
Element
hobby
Games.
that?
I'm doing some as we speak, and my current thing. I've gone in on the Sons of Horus, and
Oh, did you
inspired by
purchase an
picking up.
army?
I may have done. I may have bought, sort of bootstrapped the whole thing. Um, an opportunity presented itself, and I may have jumped in. And as a result of that, that has fired up my imagination to jump in a little bit. And I have put together some Justairian Terminators, which I had collected over various second-hand ones, and there was even some I bought when they first came out and had remained unbuilt, just in pieces, ready to build at some point. And that we have reached that point. So I have 22 just Terminators collected over about 10 years or however long it is, and I'm finally getting paint on them and doing my best to make them look respectable and
Might
thoroughly
have
enjoying
some.
it.
Might have some jet bikes. Sons of Horus jet bike.
Sons
Yeah.
of Horus jetbikes.
Mm.
Is that Was that an army project abandoned, or was that?
It was a purchase of a friend
Mm.
when I was going to do a shed loads of jet bikes, and at the moment I just can't see myself using as many as I've got. Um,
Well, I'm a
I'll
sucker.
have, I'll have
You
a
know
little
this,
dig out at some point. Add it to the list of things that need to be sold. Um,
but that has been my hobby thing, where I'm getting my 2 or 3 hours when I can, after everyone's gone to bed, staying up too late painting.
Very good.
But thoroughly enjoying that at the moment, and grabbing a bit up every 5 minutes here and then. As someone said once, our good friend Michael said it is worth just trying to put, even if you just do 5 or 10 minutes, it's just worth trying to do something each day. You just snatched time over these things, and you find yourself just doing like, prepping a model or something like that. And it's amazingly satisfying doing that kind of thing. I found just grabbing 5 minutes here. It's amazing how that adds up, and you suddenly realise, oh, I've got quite a lot here. I have had a go at painting marble on their bases, and I have made it look like a child has done it. I think that's going to need some work. Trying to paint the veins on these things because they already have the bases on the models. In the
Right.
case of these second-hand ones, whereas the ones I was trying to match, the bases were painted separately.
Could
So
you not
trying to paint
take that?
marble veins, oh my god! Well, I thought I might do more damage, and I thought that's fine. I can make it look reasonably respectable enough, and I was wrong.
No.
So I'm going to need to do a little bit of thinking about that. But yeah, so that's been my hobby excitement, is just staring Terminators and trying to hunt down some banners to do those as well. What about you? What have you been up to?
Not a lot. So, I mean, it's not been that long since we recorded because it was so late, the previous one. But also just lots of things getting in the way, like, just work and the boy as usual. And then periods where I'm trying to list stuff on eBay, and then that takes, an evening of doing
That
that.
does
And
take a
then,
long time, that stuff.
yeah. And then packing up. In fact, I've got a couple more bits here to pack up and send off, and just slowly getting. What I should be doing is doing a little bit every day and just saving the eBay, the listing, and then when I
Mm,
get the money off weekend, then just put them all live. That's what I should be doing.
mm.
But plenty of stuff here that still needs to go. So I want to try and get to Adepticon next year, but my car is going in for some work
Oh, no.
in a week, and there's a list of things that are wrong with it, and I think it's worth doing, but I don't even know how much it's going to cost yet. And then, yeah,
Yikes.
just looking at money, kind of going, oh,
That adds
don't know
up,
if
doesn't
it's
it?
going to work out. Like, I don't
Yeah.
know if I don't know if it's going to work out and me be able to do the stuff for the family that I should be doing. Like, I could do it,
Yeah.
but at what cost?
Certain
Yeah,
priorities start to kick in at that point, and you think, I
exactly.
have got to remind myself. I have found, I mean, I'm thoroughly enjoying at the moment with the Age of Sigmar launch coming on at the moment, that we're not getting hit every Sunday with like, oh, I kind of fancy that as well. Oh, I kind of fancy that. It's coming, I think, with all the things that they've previewed,
Oh,
particularly the Necromunda stuff. I'm a little bit wary of that coming, but at the moment, a few weeks where you're not getting like, oh crap, I've got to get on it. That said, it was a return to the old ways when they put the map, the Echoes of Eternity map went
right.
up the other week, and I was like, oh damn, gonna have to try and jump in on this fairly quickly because the old scalpers raising their heads again, potentially, or just generally it being popular. It was not a problem. It was actually fairly chilled.
Y-
I think they were on
Yeah,
sale for quite a while, fortunately.
I mean, I've said it before about like the amount of times now I'm like, oh yes, it's a weekend where I don't want to buy anything.
Yeah,
Um,
it's been like that
and
for a
even
while.
now, even now when I know I'm probably not going to spend any money over the next few weeks, I think my next purchase will be the Age of Sigmar rule, just the core book. I don't need the armies.
Mm,
Maybe some sundry stuff around that, but who knows? So there's that, and then it's working through the pile of stuff I've got as much as possible. So
yeah,
I've got better at that. I've still got lots of stuff to sell, some stuff to find. I've got to write my list for greens for the warp. I was like, I could build off the army I had, and I'm like, oh, I know what they're going to do. They're going to not allow Primarchs, are they? Okay,
you
so that's
mentioned this. Yeah.
best part of 600 points taken out of the list. So I've got
Ugh.
to fill that up and then get up to 3,000 or whatever it is. So, I mean, you can make infantry quite expensive with Space Force. So, also noted, because in classic Greg fashion, I think just fashion of not using an army for a while and then going to it. I didn't make one single combat shield save in
Amazing,
our games
amazing,
at that
amazing.
event. I don't think it would have done much, but you never know. Um, Need to remember that's going on the list of things to remember for next
Going on
time I
the cheap.
play.
Yeah, I keep meaning to do that.
Yeah. But I've literally just got 10 of those models out on my desk, and I've been working through trying to. My big problem at the moment is trying to work out how much effort to put in and how much to paint.
Okay.
And
I was humbled going to the Barbarous event. Just seeing that, as I wanted to what I took to be respectable, and I knew that I knew people were going to put in the effort because of the nature of the sort of people that were going to attend that event, and otherwise I knew we get. And as always, you're going to get a range. Um, I was blown away by the stuff that was there, pretty much across the board. I thought everyone's army looked great. And I was like, oh, right, okay. I need to actually, if I want to look good here, and I want this to be, if I
I
want to
think
satisfy myself, I want
yeah,
to up this. So
yeah, I don't think
put the time in.
your army looks out of place by any stretch of the imagination. I appreciate that you want to feel like you can step up and
Yeah,
be
I
in
just
that
want to bring it
company.
up
That's
to
fair enough.
a sort of, I've got my own goals about how I want to
Yeah,
up that. And you suddenly realize, okay, to do that, you need to put some time in. You need to do this. There's no shortcuts here. And that's with a specific goal in mind, of course.
sure.
And army painting is its own, and that specific
Yeah,
goal being, I want to push myself to
mine.
up the standard.
Yeah, mine is okay. Cool. Orange hair on this guy. Ginger hair is 4 or 5 layers. Brilliant. Am I happy with the armor just being quite flat? I'm looking at the amount of time and effort it would take to improve it,
Mm.
and wondering if it's worth it.
Hmm.
Although, if we look at someone posted on our group chat on
Oh
Facebook,
yes,
we had, if I can find the
some
right page,
lovely
Infantry Podcast Group, private
Blood
group,
Angels
Chris
successor
Spurgeon.
type things. Yeah.
Yeah, an alternative colour scheme of.
Oh, that's true.
So
Yes, not
his
successor.
story is a company that's delayed in fully repainting their armor red and instead started buffing the original grey to a high shine. This is so Chris Spurgeon.
Oh, that's
So he's
cool.
got this kind of silver with bronzy picked out details, which I actually really like on some of the armor on the Mark IV, with having the plates. What do you would call them? I suppose the the back of the leg and the rear of the bum, and then using the vents on the armor
Mm.
and paint them with different colors really effective. For me, those detailing would take a little bit. So I'm sitting there thinking, is it worth it?
Yeah.
Is it worth it for me to do it for my army? Because with the mix of armor, it does like it's not just that; it's then doing the vents on the backpacks, which cross over to the 60s. So it's every model will have to have that extra level of
Mm.
painting.
I was listening to another podcast the other day about like why miniatures? What's the draw? Why not tokens? Why not paper counters? That sort of thing. And it's kind of, what do you want to get from it? And are you doing it for a gaming piece? Are you doing it for? I mean, part of it, as I'm painting them, as I'm building them particularly, and then in painting them as well, I'm telling a story in my head. You're sort of living into it. Now it's a question of how far you want to go with that. Having played that event recently with you, seeing the way you played and the way you were into the game, your complete understanding of it and a feel for it, it feels like it's more the game first,
Um, it
hobby
can
side
be.
second.
I think we
That's a
also
bit of a
don't.
simplification, bit of a gross simplification, perhaps.
I think that's sometimes an effect of the type of game that's being played. I think if I went to a
Mm.
narrative event, which a true narrative event, then I play differently. But for me, it's more time.
Yeah.
Time times effort equals whatever. That you can be good and quick and cheap, or you can be good and quick but not cheap, and good and cheap but not quick, and I can be one of those three rather than three of those three. So
Is it time, quality, cost? Pick two. Yeah,
yeah, I'm more pick one. So
yeah, yeah. There it is.
yeah, um, so yeah, it's just deciding what works for you. At the end of the day, got to get it on the table. Uh, is the one I've got to have a fully painted army, and
When
it
is
will
when
do.
is greetings?
It is September. It's
Okay.
my my anniversary weekend.
Brilliant.
Yep. But we are away in Italy for 10 days in August.
Oh, lovely. Very nice.
So yeah, yeah,
No?
yeah.
Not so
We'll
keen?
see. I'll
Don't
tell
like it
you
last time?
afterwards.
Okay.
Tell you when
Interesting,
I get back.
interesting.
Um, I'm sure it'll be fine. Uh, but we'll see. We'll see. Um, maybe try and go to San Marino as well. You
Very
never
nice.
know. We're in Rimini. I'm sure it'll be lovely. Just hopefully not too hot for my
Oh, yeah. Very nice.
my tender complexion. Yeah. So time is limited. Basically, it's a month and a half for me, 2 months. So yeah, I'm gonna write a list and say maybe dig out some more bits, but we'll get there. I'm sure it'll be done.
Go bonkers. Go
Anyway,
for a different army. That's it. Just start a new army.
well, I've got loads of custodians. I say that, so I can chuck them as an
Ah,
allied
because
force.
custodians are an option. Hmm.
So and some sisters as well. So I could mix it up a little bit.
Hmm.
I'll try and get some photos online. As I say, it's all pretty basic. I need to touch up the bases a little bit. Whoever did these bases, a little bit
Someone
slapdash with them.
slapdash that. Someone slapdash that one. Probably an evening. What kind of
Indeed, less
cowboy
than
would
an
do that?
evening.
There is one other thing. It depends whether it's not a hot. Well, it's hobby, sort of. I went to Warhammer World.
Oh yes.
I decided at the 11th hour, because I didn't think I would, but my friend of the show, Mr. Dan, not your good self, was going up because he had queued previously to get the End and the Death when it went on sale for the second time, and they put some in copies in stores, and they put copies available in Warhammer World a few months ago, and the people queued for people who had missed out online for the pre-orders for the second time, queued up outside, some of which very early in the morning or the previous day, in fact. But they were unfortunately they didn't have enough at that point. They only had about 15 copies for sale at that point, and so those who were put in the queue, who were in the queue, who were unlucky, name was they made a note of, and we said we hope we can sort you out in the future. They contacted Dan and said, we're putting them on sale again. And they put an announcement out on the various channels, Warhammer World, and they said, we have managed to get hold of or keep back around just under 700 copies, and we're going to put them on sale. They put out a long, detailed description of what process they were going to do. And that happened to be last Monday at time of recording. They put them on sale, and they had a process where you would go and on the day when they opened, you would be allocated a ticket, and then you could then enjoy Warhammer World for a day. And at the end of the day, at 6 o'clock, they would close to the general public, and those with tickets could purchase a copy of the book. And I decided to join Dan going up there on that, just I thought it would be quite a fun day. I had the opportunity, work was reasonably quiet, so it was fairly straightforward to persuade others that I could have the day to do that. Not certainly pretty lucky to be in that position, unlike a lot of people, and went along, and it looked like quite a few others did the same. I'd say there was probably in the region 200, maybe 250 people who did something similar across the day. There was quite a few people queued in the morning, none seriously early, because I think everyone realised they were prepared to bet that you didn't need to queue from the day before or something crazy, because the chances of them selling out of 700, the chance of 700 people queuing was quite low. So we went up there the night before and went over to Warhammer World in the morning, and it was a really great atmosphere, actually. GW, Graves Workshop's team, Warhammer World team specifically, I thought handled it really well. Actually, the whole team did, because even the security team were walking around saying to people, if you need anything, let us know. If you need the bathroom, whatever. They handled the whole thing, I think, as well as anyone could have reasonably expected. And I thought the communication from the Warhammer World team in particular, which I made a point of telling a few of them, my opinion on that, I thought their communication was great. They just let everyone know what to expect, how to behave, how the day was going to run, and what to do. And it was just a chance to hang out in Warhammer World. We played some games, chatted to various people who I didn't expect to run into up there, and had a good day and got a copy of the book. And that was great.
They stayed in store for a few days,
I
which
don't
is
think
quite
they sold out.
surprising. They have sold out. Yeah.
They have now. Oh wow.
Yeah, they sold out a few days ago. I was talking to a friend up that way, and he was like, "Oh, I'm away working, and I won't have time to get there." And then he was like, "On the, oh, I might head in," and I'm like, "Yeah, sold out like at 10 that day apparently."
Oh,
Um,
that's galling.
so yeah, I'm not. I think he might have been trying to grab one for someone else or something, but so I don't know how needed it was, but
Mm.
um, yeah. So I mean, looked like that saga's kind of over finally.
Yeah, I think it was a surprise to everyone that they were putting them on sale again, and that they had the volume that they did.
Mm,
I don't think anyone was quite expecting those sorts of numbers to be available. And as you say, I think it sounds like then they were probably around for over a week. They were strictly limiting after that first day. They were strictly limiting them to one per person, and even on the day, I think there was a limit, a reasonable. They did acknowledge that there were groups on there where people were turning up, groups on Facebook and similar, where members of those groups were turning up with the explicit intent of buying copies to help out the groups, people on those groups,
right.
to, and this was collectors groups, so that were to sell them on for retail costs, etc., rather than upsell them or scalp them or whatever. And they did you could go around a couple of times. So they didn't limit it to one per person either, but they were going around in kind of ticket order each time. And I think
Yeah.
virtually each time they went round, it halved or more the number of people who were going around. And I think the most I heard anyone walk away with was only a handful. And those, as far as
There's
I'm aware, were all groups.
there's quite a few on eBay, um,
It's not going to
which
stop it, are you?
you can't stop it. And
Then
people, these people will
probably not
say,
going
"Oh,
to admit
two
it, so.
books is worth a day off work to go up there,"
Yeah, yeah.
that kind of thing. I just seen someone selling a hardback version of End of F3 with the first line being pre-Custodes retcon, which is
Oh,
it tells you what kind of audience they're trying to hit. But there we go.
amazing.
But yeah, so End of Death 3. Did you get to have much fun at Warhammer World, or was it mainly just chatting and
No, I did. I didn't. I thought I would, but I didn't go around the exhibition. But even just hanging out, because there were people there, even just you get chatting to people in the queue.
sure, yeah.
Met two chaps, called Kevin and James, and had
Kevin
come down
James.
from the north. Yeah, not Kevin James, but they were part of a hobby group that I was very jealous of. They're about 16 people. They regularly have their own little sort of weekender events, so they get everyone together and they have these themed events. And James and the group was putting together these packs, and they would be highly thematic and um, tell a real story, real twists and turns in them. The hobby standard seemed to be huge. Everyone was really invested. So it's a really cool group that they were from, where they would regularly play. And just chatting to them, and then they were there to play Titanicus. I was like, oh, I have to see this. And they had like 4,000 points each of Ignatum and Mortis. So, oh, this is going to look crazy. So, and they were like, yeah, come over, run a couple of times, do whatever. Incredibly welcoming, friendly. Dan had brought along a couple of board games. He brought along Combat Arena and Blackstone Fortress and things, which we were painting the night before after the England game. And yeah, we got a chance to just kind of hang out, catch up with people, had some long chats with people I just don't see other than at
Sure.
Warhammer events. About all sorts of stuff. Running into people I saw at Beachhead. It was
Yeah,
Chris Simon was there from Twisted Titanicus group, playing Titanicus as well. So Titanicus was well represented, which was good to see. Loads of heresy games being played.
cool.
It's just fun hanging out there, really. Dipping in and out. Towards the end, it started to feel a bit more like an endurance thing because we hadn't taken along like 3,000 points of something or other. But at the end of it, you're like, okay, we've been here for 9 hours now. This is starting to become a bit of time. But there was plenty to do, plenty of people to chat to. So I thoroughly enjoyed it, and not being terribly far away. It was only like 2 hours drive from where we are, just over. It really wasn't that grueling. I think some
Sure.
people had really driven quite a way.
Yeah. I was just trying to think. Did I do all my hobby bit before you jump back in? Did your hobby bit too? I think I think I did. I do want to just shout out Jamie Yates for giving us some very kind feedback about enjoying the latest show, and Mark Bolton Mags sending an email, which was enjoyed the kind of review topic
Oh, great.
that we did.
Oh, I'm really
But
pleased.
also,
That's great to hear.
just wanted to say, let me get the email then. So he's been listening for 5 years. Thanks so much for the Dungeon Crawler Carl recommendation. Never have I binge read a book series so hard. Uh,
Says it
so
all.
yeah, needing a new series, and my friend's done it pretty hard as well, which is quite fun because I'm reading the series he's just read, the Rivers of London series,
Oh,
listening to on
classic. Right.
Audible.
Yeah.
Have you read? Are you
I haven't,
familiar?
but it's been recommended. I'm familiar with it. It's been recommended to me repeatedly.
Yeah. So anyway, I'll come back to that in a second. So yeah, so I'm doing that, and he's doing Dungeon Crawler Carl. So we're like comparing where each other are in those respective books, waiting for the next one to come out, kind of thing. So
Nice.
yeah, but I think we can talk a little bit, like add in here, like what we're reading, what we're watching, kind of thing, because
Oof.
um, I don't actually watch much stuff now, TV wise. There's like so much stuff, but as I say, I'm reading the Rivers of London series, which is set in London, and it's a copper who gets mixed up in some paranormal slash um, fantastical stuff going on. Like the first book, pretty much straight away, the first book he meets a ghost, and it
Classic.
continues on from there. I would describe it as a, I don't know how to describe it. It's a bit like Dresden, but not quite as good, in my opinion. It makes me ache for the next Dresden Files book, but it's still good by itself. But it's kind of it's not similar per se, but
How
it
many in the
has
series? How
it's
big a series is it?
oh blimey, there's quite a few
I was going to say
because it's
it's been recommended sufficiently that I think it's been running for
oh yeah, oh no,
quite
yeah, the
some
first
time.
one was. First one was 2011, Moons Over Soho, what's called
Hmm.
Midnight Riot in the US, I think. One, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight. There's loads of novellas and novels,
Oh,
graphic novels, sorry. And novellas, I'm not sure if I'm going to keep getting them on Audible because a credit for a novella, yeah, or them buying it. And you don't need to read them per se. Um, but yeah, Ben Aronovich for that. Um, yes, that's my post Dungeon Crawler Carl recommendation on that one. Do
I've
you?
gone. I've gone back into. I was working my way through Gaunt's Ghosts,
All right,
re-listening to those one after another on my commute. I was getting through those pretty quickly. I've just finished Salvation's Reach, and at a recommendation of Dan, I was going to go and do the Urdesh, Matt Farah's Urdesh, because I've
right.
never read those. So I was going
No,
to do those that's a reasonable time, I think, to jump in those. However, I diverted, and we've gone in for Sons of Horus. And I put a shout out on our little group thing to say, does anyone know of a resource or a listing or something where I can look up which books and stories cover these legions as a key player in the story? As I thought, someone's done something like that. I know there's story arcs collections, and Dan just came in instantly with this little thing, and I will find the name of it and I'll share it with you, Greg, so we can put it on the. Or in fact, I could do it myself. Put it on the a link to this because I want to find out and credit the person. Basically, someone has put together an incredible sort of database, I suppose, of collecting together, organized by Legion, all the stories that cover them, including novels, novellas, short stories, everything.
can't remember what it's
So it
called.
was just a lovely list. That's what I'm just in the process of looking it up, because I've got to look it up in our group chat. But I thought, well, that's such a valuable resource. So I just immediately was able to go and look it up. Where is it now? It's not there. There it is. This is Timmel's Heresy. Tymell Heresy: Legion and Other Timelines. I will share that link to it. It's incredible. It's just so you just go through and say, right, I want to read about the Dark Angels. Here they all are in a chronological order. Tells you they're kind of coded about whether it's a novel, a short story, or whatever format it exists. So I was able to go, right, cool. I can gather together my collection, go and look at this. Which books do I need? And like, there are books and short stories buried in anthologies that and there's several short stories I didn't know existed. I'm now going to go and hunt those down on Black Library and pick them up. And you think, oh, okay, that's the complete arc then of the Sons of Horus through the Heresy. Fantastic. Incredible resource. So I've dived back into the Sons of Horus. I'm considering rereading Horus Rising and Vengeful Spirit because it's forever since I say reading. I was going to put them on audio. So that's kind
Yeah,
of where I am.
it's reading.
I'm still very yes, exactly. It's consuming. I'm still very heresy focused at the moment rather than branching out. I might, inspired by a few things at work, I might give Jimmy Carr's book a
All right.
listen. That's supposed to be very good because it's much more it's much more than just about comedy. It's much more about thinking about
Yeah,
sort of
he's
what are you about.
see him on clips on various different
Yeah, his
things.
interview on Diary of a CEO is really good, amongst others.
Yeah,
Richard Osman's
uh,
blew me away the other day as well.
he
I
I
highly recommend that
quite
series.
like some of the things that Jimmy Carr talks about actually.
Yeah,
Um,
very clever individual. Very, very, very clever, very
yeah,
considered.
and seems to have reached a point where he's changed the way he's looking at stuff.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think we can all do with a little bit of that every now and then. I actually um it's even more divergent. We'll move on in a minute. Good listener. I had a Facebook memory of me sharing the TED talk from Amanda Palmer, which I might have talked about before on the show. Amanda Palmer is the lead singer of the Dresden Dolls.
Oh yeah.
Was married to Neil Gaiman, and I think there might be complicated things around her, and I'm not getting involved in any of that. Don't really know. But the TED Talk is about you've got a book called The Art of Asking, and it's a TED Talk, 13 minutes around basically um, how I learned to stop worrying and let people help. And
Okay.
it's something that changed my views a lot. I was always the guy who, when a mate said buy you a drink, I'm like, nah, don't worry about it, mate. When people were like, oh, help us support the podcast, I was like, no, it's fine, thank you. You don't need to do that. And my missus particularly is that kind of person. It's like, I can do it myself. You I don't need to accept your help on this, and that's fine. You keep your money or your time or whatever it is.
Hmm.
But it's basically, as I haven't read the book, just that 30-minute TED talk was kind of enough to show that there is it's more than just a receiving of something when someone offers to help. It's much more transactional than that. So that's something I think is definitely, particularly if you're in an environment where you're creating. I've recommended it to a few people
That's
who've
interesting.
talked about setting up patrons. I'm feeling like frauds for doing it. I think it's quite a common thing for people who are not
Mm.
doing it, who are not planning to do it for a living, but have to make a decision about how much they can do based on their own resources. Yeah, it kind of changed my attitude on people offering help and me accepting help. So, anyway,
Best kind of resource thing to look at if it's both makes you think about it and then changes your opinion. That's
yeah,
clearly something that's quite significant. On
yes.
that sort of topic of you know about Patreon and doing those sorts of things, I found the video by Jordan Sorcery recently.
Oh,
Very interesting. His recent one about sort of just reflecting
yes.
on his time. Jordan Sorcery, for those who don't know, he's an individual who's set up he's a chap who set up a YouTube channel specifically to look at and talk about the history of Games Workshop with a bit of a focus on the business and how the business has developed, what influenced that, and how that has impacted the games and the models and charted the history of it. And he's clearly a very effective researcher, person who is good, very charismatic and capable of having good conversations with people who were directly involved with that. He's done personally, I found that a very, very interesting and fascinating series that he's put on there. He came from a background of working in a very different field, which he explains in that video. And he's just saying he is having a go at doing this as a full-time thing. And he was reflecting on, it's been 6 months. I think it was 6 months or a year. I forget. This is where I am. And this is how much longer I can look at this as an experiment before I have to decide what the next steps are, if any. It was a real eye opener for me. I thought it was really interesting about how it is, and I'm slightly surprised that it's not a bigger channel than it is. But I suppose in many ways it's a niche of a niche of a niche. And he's very, I thought the way he comes across about that. You talk about people asking for help. He's very clear that he is doing that to try and make it sustainable. But equally, he's not. He treads a very interesting line about not asking for help as such, but I think he had a similar thing where he was doing it, but
Well,
wasn't
that's
sure whether he should be getting recompense for it and similar.
it's also a very like it's not even a fine line, but there's a very different thing from asking people to support if they feel like it's valuable, which is what he does. And the different ways to support, because you don't necessarily have to pay someone to support them,
Absolutely, yeah.
things like that. But there is a model company where the guy who runs it has regularly over the last 10 years, I don't follow him on Twitter, but I see people retweeting, please help me. If I make X much more money, I will have hit my basic target I need for this month. And I see it with them as one of Emma's friends has got started up their own business, maybe as a resale for like an Avon kind of thing or something like that. How often do you go to the world just to support someone if they're not making what you want? And that's a tricky one to get. Am I going to support Jordan Sorcery just because I feel like he's a nice guy who should have a business? Well, can't do that for everyone because you won't have any money. So
Yeah,
do I limit it to people who give me value? And those are tricky questions to ask sometimes.
yeah.
But yeah, I think I was able to help Jordan get in touch with some of the Age of Sigmar community guys for their old
Oh, great.
podcast guys, because when he does his Age of Sigmar, he's obviously doing some research for his shows for that at the moment. So I was thinking that if I then jump on a tweet at those people, it might show up because those people follow me, because we're old chums. So whether that happened or not, it certainly worked overall. The general plan worked, and he got what he wanted, which is good. Again, like might not. I did support Jordan for a while, but decided that it was one of the things that I would cut back on. And
Yeah,
actually, there's another way to help him without, say, putting money in his pocket. So
and you've got to decide which of those things are you
yeah,
can
because
do, of course, within
yeah,
one's limited resources, obviously.
yeah,
But
so it
yeah, that was
all
just an
adds up.
interesting one that was would be worth a watch, I think, particularly for in an era where we see more and more people doing shows and creating and doing things. He puts an interesting perspective from the position of there, but given his usual mature way of looking at those things, I thought
Yeah,
it's an interesting watch.
for sure. Yeah, because I've heard a lot of people talking about uh, Peachy, Suggs, and Rob
Jugs.
and Jugs and all that. Which, if you don't know about it, fair enough. Whatever. Like, don't worry yourself too much. But the dynamic of a three-way podcast, which is an outlet, but is also a way to funnel people to hit three different audiences and things like that. You've got to be a little bit like, it's not cynical to say that, but it's a good idea. But to look at their kind of for another project, I was looking up Instagram followers and things like that, and it's quite surprising some of the numbers you get, and assuming that some people are boosting their own Instagram following. Easy ways to do it, but yeah. Anyway, there was I think that might have been all the bits.
That's everything I can think of.
That's just right. Well, we've waffled. I mean, we've had some rambling sections before, but that is pretty up there as far as we go with rambling sections. So let's leave it there. I'm not even sure. Actually, no, let's not even break because I'm not even sure there's any news.
Ooh,
Like, because it's been
not
like two
really. I mean,
weeks.
there's one which we'll talk about. There's an exemplary battle that came
Oh
out of
yeah,
nowhere.
let's take a break. Let's come back and we'll save this section and come back and chat some more. Okie dokie. Well, that was an extended rambly intro hobby. What we're
Hobby
reading
catch up,
section.
hobby review.
Uh, yeah, the what's going on in Heresy will be a little bit quicker. What have we had since? I mean, so it's only been 2 weeks, and iOS is coming, so we haven't had
Not a
much.
lot, although that the week before which I think I can't remember if we touched on it last time. A lot went up for pre-order for Legions, and there was a bunch of characters
Yeah,
went up for order. Did
but
we
we
touch on it? Was that
well
was that
no,
last time?
because we don't touch on what comes out too much because we've already talked about it on previews.
Under what the
So
news
yeah,
is.
it
Yeah,
came
fair
out.
enough. Yeah.
Yeah, we've had a drop. We're still waiting on the weapons set, aren't we?
Yes.
That's the one thing of the old reviews that we
One
still
thing that
haven't
was on the
got.
roadmap that isn't there.
Yeah, on the roadmap, yeah, absolutely. And we have no roadmap going forwards at the moment.
No,
So
not
a
yet.
bit of a
If we, well,
sad
we don't know if there's
place.
going to go on.
But
But in terms of news, I don't think there was a great deal of heresy news other than an exemplary battles came out of nowhere,
yeah,
which was very exciting. Like to see an exemplary battle.
the assault on Castrum Velx.
Yes,
Velx, yeah, something like
uh,
that.
and it also marked a different. There was a bit of a difference in the way they handled this, or the way they
A
presented,
major
should I say,
difference.
this one. Yeah, I
Yeah,
agree. They linked up with a couple of people who are on the who are part of these creators. A couple of the sort of groups that that put out a lot of content. They linked up with Cult of Paint and asking them to paint up or model up and paint up a unit of Sanguinary Guard, who are the unit that are featured in this exemplary battle, and they did with, I want to say, SNN. It was SNN battles.
SN battle.
SN, not SNN.
Yeah.
SN battle reports. They asked them to play through the exemplary battle as presented in the book, in the PDF rather, including making up one of the units as well, but making up and modeling up and painting the unit to use that features in the exemplary battle. That sort of close tie-in with community members hasn't been done before. That was new, I think, other than
In
obviously the launch of the launch box.
Yeah, it's a new way of revealing stuff.
Mm.
I wonder. My hope is it was a let's try this and see if we can do it moving forwards. Not, I mean, because it has to be planned in advance. So these rules would have to get to them in time for Henry to build and paint the Sanguinary Guard. So, and they have in-house Blood Angels players who I'm sure they could have told to have done this. So it
Mm.
seems like a deliberate move rather than oh shoot, we need to do something. Oh,
Oh yeah,
why don't we do
because
this?
they did an
Um,
in-house set as well, of course.
yeah, but I also wouldn't put it past GW to do something like historically they've made decisions that have been good but haven't been made for those reasons before.
Mm.
But if this feels deliberate,
Mm.
um, yeah. So Henry's video has gone out,
Mm-hmm.
obviously, and SN's has as well. designed to show off the Mark 6 kit. Obviously, yeah, it's promotional material. It's that's the
Possibly
nature
the
of the
Mark
beast.
III. It's either the Command Squad upgrade frame.
Well, he's used
Oh,
so you got
Henry used the
Henry,
Mark
yeah,
6. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, and there's some Blood Angels bits as well.
Yeah,
So as part of that, yeah, it's based around the Mark 6
yeah.
Assault Marines, and even with the other bits as well, it's still based around the Mark 6 Assault Marines.
Yes, it was the
Um,
Mark 6 Assault Marine kit, the elements of the new Command Squad kit, and as you say, in
and,
Henry's case,
and
possibly both
then
cases, the Blood Angel weapons upgrades.
yeah, and there's that little bit. So when they revealed Heresy and we went up to Nottingham, when we got our bits, we were told, right, cool, build out of the box, and then it was like, okay. I think it might have been Pete the Wargamer was the first voice to go, how much can I change? Because Pete the Wargamer cannot build a stock model, even if his own life was at risk. So, uh, we were allowed to do a few modifications to things, but they want to show off, it's a promotional material. Games want to show off their own bit. So, yeah, it's cool. But yes, so you can go to Cult Paint and watch their video on that, which is really cool.
Mm-hmm. It is.
And go to SN Battle Reports YouTube channel as well to watch them play the Secure the Keep legendary mission. What do we think? Sanguinary Guard, 210 points for 5 of them. Artificer armor, jump packs,
I
addition
think
weapons.
I think it's a very good example of what exemplary battles does, in that it is a twist on something. It doesn't necessarily present a unit that you go, oh my goodness, this is bonkers. I must have one of these. This is the latest and greatest. It's way better than other things. It's giving me an option that didn't exist before. It's a particularly powerful thing. Whatever. It's an alternative. They fill a slightly different role, but they're very similar to a command squad. But they are slightly different
They're
with
more like
their special.
the Imperial Fist Huskars
Hmm.
in that they can be an HQ or they can be a retinue.
I thought that was quite cool that they could be an HQ in their own right.
Yeah. And one Sanguinary Guard can upgrade his Petition Blade for a power weapon and Legion Standard. One guy in 5 can have a Paragon Blade. And part of the detachment includes Sanguinius. All Sanguinary Guard gain +1 attack while Sanguinius has 4 wounds or less. Shouldn't that be fewer?
Oh goodness,
It's got an S on
my
it.
my
Ah,
knowledge
I
is not
don't
up
know.
there with that.
If Sanguinius is removed as a casualty, all Sanguinary Guard in that detachment gain +1 attack. If selected, that does not include Sanguinius. All friendly units, including Sanguinary Guard units that are locked in combat, have at least one model within 6 inches of 2 or more Sanguinary Guard models. May add +1 to the total number of successful wounds caused to determine who won the result. That's their Burning Ones rules. They're all chosen warriors.
As you might expect.
Yeah, they're a support squad. I think, yeah, they're cool. 210 points. 2 wounds, 2 attacks.
It's expensive.
It's cool.
It's a high cost.
Trying to think what how much would a command squad with jump packs be? Trying to think, frankly. But well, I mean, one thing the weekend reminded me of when we went to Barbarous was just because I mean, you intellectually I know it, but you get so used to not seeing stuff that when someone puts down a unit, you think, oh, they're subpar, and then they absolutely cause pain somewhere. You're like, oh yeah, of course. It is. Why have I just gone onto my new recruit and
Well, a
Heresy's
Legion
gone?
command squad is 85 points for 3 guys.
3 guys. How many?
Includes a standard with 3 guys. There's
Right.
two chosen, one standard bearer, and then they're 18 points per additional member. And you've got all the options there, and you're obviously going to be adding on jump packs
85 was
and
it?
85
Plus
plus
32.
36
So
plus
100,
10 point plus another 50 for the jump packs
so that's 171
plus the equivalent of, I mean, let's call
additional
them power
weapons.
weapons. Let's call them power weapons for now. Five is another 25 for five of those. Five power weapons. You could, I mean, let's go with that for now.
196.
Yeah. So without, you've got the special rule. They've also, these guys have got a banner in as standard,
Yeah,
whereas the
you have to
Sanguinary
pay,
Guard, you've got to pay an extra whatever it is for that. So they are more expensive than a command
15,
squad equivalent, but they have got more
but not by
stuff.
much.
No, not by much.
And they're 40 points each additional model here.
Yeah.
And then so you don't get, particularly if you're taking Sanguinius, they get better as well with those attacks. But yeah, they're cool.
They're an interesting thing to have included because, I mean, Blood Angels have got how many? I mean, they've got the space police. They've got the sort of watchers squad. I forget what they're. The Aerolim, I think is what they're called, or something like that. I should know. The if they haven't an exemplary battle unit before, so it was surprising to see a second one come around for these guys. But it's a unit that's been talked about for a long time, and I've seen people do lots of different takes, just taking the 40k kit as it is, taking that and then doing head swaps and doing quite elaborate change arounds, and then people doing completely custom versions that are more that are less ornate than the sculpted armor that you see in the 40k kit. So people have been keen to do Sangria, particularly as they feature significantly and prominently in the Black Library publications, in the books. So it's quite cool to now see a very specific version of those in the rules, and I think the rules do represent what the Sanguinary Regard are about and provide you with an alternative to the command squad, and they're doing a slightly different type of job.
Yeah, I think they're one of the most requested units to get rules I can think of. Trying to think of anyone else that's up there that doesn't have any form of rules. I wonder, yeah, I wonder where, because it's pretty random that they shoved it out as well. I wonder if someone's joined I'm trying to think if they've advertised for any writers recently, because it could easily be the kind of test piece for a writer, that kind of thing. Maybe just one of the people had an idea and they decided to run with it. Who knows? Who knows? But hopefully, well, it means, more exemplary battles obviously are going to come, and hopefully we get more combined release things, styles, and working alongside their um, content creator in a more, I don't know, more integrated way. So it's not just here's whatever. There's more of a bit of a relationship between the two.
I thought, I mean, Goonhammer's a point they made in their article on it, which I'd recommend people diving in and having a look at. But the point they make is, while on the surface it looks like the command squad is cheaper, it isn't. When you add it all up, it's not. They're not significantly cheaper at all, and they are arguably better at a specific thing that they're designed to do, which is take on designed to do that they could end up doing is taking on other Legion elites. Their weapon loadout and additional rules makes them quite good at that. There are some downsides, as there should be. They don't have an invulnerable save. To give them an invulnerable save, you've got to be attaching a Primus Medicae, which all gets quite spendy at that point.
That's the same with almost all.
Yeah.
Like if you want a jump pack retinue squad, it's the same. You got to buy them shields or what have you, and it's not a lot of protection in that. So
No.
yeah,
I like
cool.
them, and I've immediately planned to bottle some. I already did anyway. I was planning to anyway, but it's just
Right.
reinvigorated that desire to do so rather
Utilising
than it being the bottom.
Henry's.
No, I'm probably going to go down more using the 40k kit,
Right.
as I think that's more representative of how I imagine them being this real artificer type of armor there. But I'm going to do different helmets. I might do different. I'm undecided about jump packs at the moment, about what kind of jump packs to go for with them. But certainly it'll be different helmets. I want to do the full. I basically want to make them look like the artwork that Neil Roberts has done on a couple of the covers. I
Right.
think that looks really cool, rather than the slightly more utilitarian version that we see from the recommend or the suggested kit that the kit bash, I suppose, that has been put forward by Henry at Colt and SN and GW themselves. So that's probably what I'll do, because I think they're just kind of an awesome unit to have flying around with Sanguinius.
Sure. Cool. Groovy.
The battle's quite good. The lore, which I read through. I think there are other exemplary battles that have a more interesting story. This
Cool.
one is
Well,
quite straightforward, but yeah.
let's put that one on the back burner. We are going to have to visit these exemplary battles.
That's
Probably
true. Yeah,
we keep saying
we'll
we're
do
going
that
to
as
do
a
it, but we're
separate topic. Yeah.
going to have to add it to the list of things we need to do. Any other news? Adepticon hotels went live today,
Oh wow.
and there are many more options than there were at Schaumburg, and the first three hotels have already sold out of their allocation. There is some chat about maybe opening up some more at those hotels, but it's not certain. Keep an eye on the Adepticon Facebook page for that. I have not jumped on yet, partly because I was alone with the boy at the time, partly because I forgot what I didn't forget, but just didn't keep an eye on kind of when and what time it was. And also, I'm not 100% sure I'm going to be able to afford to go. So,
It's an expensive undertaking. As
yeah,
good as it is.
I need to message them. There were some plans about maybe doing something at the event, which I need to have a look at. But it's, flights, hotel is not cheap. Okay, you can share it with a load of people and reduce that cost a lot. But say my car might be costing me a lot, and then all the bills that are going to come, and who knows what. Having a 2-year-old's just fun for money, isn't it? Just
Oh
disappears.
yes,
So it might depend on how much I can sell and what else is available. But I'm keeping an eye on a few of the other rooms around. It looks like there's lots of room, and they're walkable. Like you might not be able to go back to your hotel room in 2 minutes. It might take you 7 or 8 minutes. Like fine. It's not like going to a different hotel was a bit of a pain at Schaumburg. So yeah, Adepticon.
I think as soon as it's
Fingers
walkable, that
crossed.
becomes a. I think that's entirely viable. It's only when
Well,
it's
I think
becoming, oh crap, I've got to get a cab.
yeah.
That's not
So
great.
uh, it's downtown. It's an area built up around the convention center. The convention center's been there for donkey's years. Gen Con used to use it back in the day. So more than like at the Renaissance Schaumburg, people did leave and go out for meals, but you had to. Well, it's America. You drove anyway, but you were more likely to drive. So for some people, if you wanted to sit, the heresy guys wouldn't really leave. They'd get on the beers and they'd you know might get an Uber somewhere, but come back immediately or what have you. But here, I think there's going to be much more. Oh, let's go out the hotel for a drink because it's literally across
Mm,
the road, rather than it's going to take us 10 minutes to get there, and then we're going to have to. It feels more part of the event, more like actually
interesting.
Las Vegas feels a little bit like that because
Yeah,
you walk outside Vegas, outside of Bally's when I went there, but there's food venues right there, and then there's okay, cool. I'll walk left, right, or forwards or backwards, and there's somewhere to eat, and
it is
you don't
walkable.
have to go
Mm.
too far. It'll be interesting to see how much. There was some talk that what did I think it was in the independent characters. They had a couple of the organisers chatting, and there was some chat. I don't know if it's confirmed. I don't think it is confirmed yet, but they had the potential to do like 24-hour tournaments for like they used to do for War Machine, things
Wow,
like that, the
quite cool.
hardcore events, which might mean that the gaming space is open late because I know
Heresy Le
for
Mans.
yeah, well, I know for some of the painters, what they really liked about Golden Demon was you could walk around the Golden Demon area at 3 o'clock in the morning
Oh
when there might be
yes, I
two or
remember
three
people talking
people.
about that and be like, actually, you can get a real chance to really explore stuff.
Yeah, and it just means that people are always on venue. The thing I like less about Vegas, I mean, the hall shuts down, but everyone spreads out, so you have less of a kind of
Mm,
campus feel to it.
yeah.
Um, so hopefully they maintain the campus feel because I think that's one of the big selling points of Adepticon. Um, but who knows? We're going to find out information, I suppose. I hope GW aren't going to carry on with their new reveal structure of everything's pre-recorded. Then you can go into a room and watch
Oh
it
yeah.
live. You know,
Mm,
you're
yeah.
pre-recorded live because that sucks. But who knows? Who? So yeah. If
I
anyone wants to
would
buy some
imagine they
Sylvaneth,
probably will carry on. Yeah. Oh yes.
I
Yeah.
I
Okay.
still have some Sylvaneth as well. I've heard they're going to be filth in fourth edition.
Oh really?
I've
How
no
helpful.
idea. No idea. It's a rumor I've started. So yeah, that is project alongside not getting distracted from painting. It's project get to Adepticon. Cool. I think that'll
I
do
think
for
that's
that
all the
one.
news for now.
Yep. Let's quit this. So Howard, what topic have we decided to talk about today?
Well, we had a couple, as we've been doing a little bit of brainstorming, because we do that occasionally, trying to decide sort of what to go through with these kind of things. And we settled on events, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, this might be a bit freeform, this discussion, because I've been lazy and haven't had time to prepare quite as much. But yeah, just kind of looking at events from both sides of the aisle, really.
And this is so to sort of expand, just to giving events as a headline, how to approach an event, and as you say, from both sides, because you've run, and you mentioned this, you obviously mentioned this a fair bit, that you have run events, and you reflect on that or give your perspective from someone who has run events and been involved in running parts of events and run entire events of your own, and etc. But also, I think looking at it, as you say, from both sides, from both coming up to and attending event, particularly in my case, I've been attending events very recently as for the first time. Events, as in playing games, is what we're talking about, I think, here. Going to an event to play games rather than an Adepticon or a show or something like that, where you are a consumer as such. I thought it would just be quite interesting to look at that. And I mean, we've reflected on events that we've attended recently. This obviously we've reflected on Beachhead and on the Barbarous event recently. But I think looking at that, as we've got a few points I'd like to sort of touch on as we go through and have a little talk about that and see how we might just reflecting on that and those different experiences.
Sure thing. Sounds good. Where do we start, I suppose?
Well, what types of event? Let's go. Let's start there. Let's dive in somewhere, and I'm sure we'll move around. Types of event. What types of event are there? I mean, I've said there. I'm going to make this. I suggest we make this conversation about
Gaming.
event types where you go to play games. What types of those are there, and how has that evolved over time, and where are we right now with those?
Yeah, it's a very broad question. Um,
Yeah, that's
we
what we like.
are
We'll start broad and just
so
focus in.
if we talk about straight up gaming events, then I suppose we have categories. You have tournaments. because we do have tournaments with Heresy. You have narrative gaming. I suppose you have light narrative and heavy narrative gaming. I suppose I would consider
Now,
that the best way to talk about it.
this is pretty ignorant of me to say this. Do Heresy hasn't formalized itself into match play, narrative play, and open play, which is something that's been introduced in both Age of Sigmar and 40k, if I'm not mistaken.
I mean, GW says it has. Like,
They are referred to in the rule books of those two games. I don't believe it is for Heresy. Is that correct?
correct. It's what's in the book, isn't it?
Yeah,
It's maintained that kind of thought process of being a narrative game without explicitly kind of coming out and
yeah.
saying that.
So, and then, therefore, as such, as you say, then you look at events, and there are those that are put forward as tournaments, where it's sort of the game mechanics first, if you like, is one way of looking at what a tournament is. And I think that's as a general catch-all term, that's what you would describe those as. You're going there, you're probably going there to enjoy those games and enjoy the sport of it, and hopefully come away having done quite well through winning and having fun playing games with people. Then there are narrative events where you are telling a story through the games that you play, or you are retelling a story, or you're exploring a story, perhaps creating a story through the games that you are playing, either in a more free-form way or in a way that's led by the event organizer in a sort of GM style role. Is that it? Is it just the two events types?
Yeah. So if we take it back a step, the match play, narrative play, open play that GW promote is sort of a bit of a mess, to be honest, because I don't think it gels with what gamers think of. So match play being an organized, agreed framework in which to play games means 90 odd percent of games are match play games. Because even if I
Yeah.
go to the club and play a friendly game, it's still a match play game because we're playing 2,000 points, probably with a mission out of the book. Open play is bring some models, do what you want
Yeah.
with zero structure. Well,
Yeah.
I don't know anyone really. I don't think I know a single person who could have fun doing that. Almost the, yeah. I just don't think you can. Like because it's just
You've
too
got no
wild. Like
basis. Yeah.
no
It's
concept.
too.
It's Age of Sigmar first edition when you could literally
Yeah.
bring
That
every
is
model
exactly what
you
it is.
own, and no one played that either because it's dumb.
And there was lots of statements at the time of, "Oh, well, this is how we play it, and this is a great opportunity for this." And you think, I'm not entirely convinced that that is genuinely the case.
No,
When people
so
said that, anything,
you,
yeah,
you
okay,
generally then just get casual. Like there's just so many different ways to talk it. Like there's it's more like casual gaming becomes um, match play gaming by default because actually the easiest way to casually play the game is to have an already agreed format that both players don't need to think about, which is
mm,
what the match play setting gives you. But casual gaming is very different to tournament gaming.
mm,
I at my club will say I want a casual game of 40k as opposed to a tournament game of 40k. The expectation there is that the opponent doesn't necessarily bring the hardest army and isn't trying their absolute hardest to win the game. I'm agreeing to do the same, so I'm not bringing three, whatever it happens to be, the hardest unit at the time, followed by three of what is the second hardest unit of the time,
mm.
um, or what have you. I'm trying to
Even the
create.
vocabulary is interesting because you're even there. It's like saying, "Oh, the tournament version of that is the version where you're going in hard, if you like." And
Well,
then casual is the more relaxed version. It's really interesting that those exist and about having that conversation
yeah.
beforehand.
So yeah, I say don't bring a tournament list. A lot of those people could bring a tournament list and could
Mm,
still be quite casual in their gaming, but it sets the expectation
yeah,
that
that's
if you
key.
bring yeah, back in the day, if you bring Dectus Mechanicus and you take all the units that can shoot me off the board in 2 turns, then that's not what I'm after. I'm
Yeah.
after ideally something which means I don't have to worry about bringing the best things just to be for us to be able to enjoy a game.
Mm.
Because narrative gaming is different to casual gaming, and a, a lot of 30k ends up being casual gaming. Most of the games I play at the club are casual games. They're not narrative games. You know, it's let's play, let's meet. Cool. I'm bringing in my space wolves. What you bring? I'm bringing my Emperor's Children. Cool. Let's have a game. Roll one up out of the book. It's not a
Yeah.
narrative game.
You're not there saying, okay,
No.
which world are we fighting on? What's the
Yeah.
which characters are involved? What's the larger campaign? This is good. That's a
We're
narrative
making
game,
up our own
isn't it?
mission. We're changing rules. We're allowing
Yeah,
different
yeah,
stuff
yeah.
to happen. Like in the middle of the game, we're saying, "Oh, it would be cool if this happened at this point," because let's say I played a huge game at what's the name of the club that Jason Mullins was part of? The one in London. Anyway, they used to have a podcast
Eight.
and everything. No, no, it was a mainly 40k club, not far from there. But anyway, the
Mm.
Overlords.
Yep.
That's the one.
Uh-huh.
The Overlords, and there was a massive game of 40k going on, and there was this bloke just flying his plane down the table, and then I just as fast as he could, and then on turn 4 was like, "Can I crash it into that big building over there with a defiler hanging off of it?" They're like, "Yeah, that'd be cool." Right?
Do it.
That's narrative
Yeah,
coming into the game. Doesn't happen in most of the games I play at the club.
yeah,
It doesn't happen in most games I play anywhere. Like, can we work out a rule for this happening because it would be good? And I think this defiler was going to charge like a commissar or anything, and this commissar was in the building, and somehow the commissar survived the building being crushed, but the
amazing.
defiler didn't. Like it was, like you can't do that with the normal rules, really,
Yeah, yeah,
because it doesn't cover every eventuality. And open gaming is almost GW saying, "Look, do what you want." I was like, well,
yeah,
actually, that comes under narrative gaming. But what you find with narrative gaming a lot of the time is the human brain for most people still needs that structure. Of you
yeah,
can't just say to people, "Do what you want," because they're like, "Oh, but what do I do?"
yeah. And what I want to
Um,
do is have some structure around which I
yeah, well, I
can
can do
tell
this
a
and that
story or
and that.
game or otherwise. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so like it's blurred lines over what is your event.
Well, even just taking this on as a hobby project, as the Sons of Horus I'm doing now, I've had several conversations in different groups, Sons of Horus groups and gaming groups that I'm part of. Because what I wanted to do was put together a list, which I worked towards completing, painting, and having ready to play games with. I said, Sons of Horus, what would I like to do? There's plenty of example lists out there of what to do with a heresy box, Age of Darkness box, what to do, how to start the Legion. I thought, actually, what I'd like to do, what I think is super cool, is a Saturnine type thing. I'd like to have lots of Justarian teleporting in, and I'd like to have lots of either veterans or Reavers, preferably Reavers, because I'd like to make it all first company, coming in termites. Super cool. Look it up. It's like, that's actually quite difficult, if not impossible, to do. You certainly can't really put Reavers in termites. Now, in a narrative or casual type of game, potentially open type game, I could do that. I could speak to my opponent and say, this is the type of list I'm thinking of doing. And you would kind of want to have that conversation because you'd want them to be ideally bringing something that's a counter rather than just some random thing. That's a very different type of game than just a, hey, I'm free on Tuesday. Are you free on Tuesday? Have you got 3,000 points? Yeah, I have. Cool. Let's play, as you say, Emperor's Children versus Death Guard or whatever. It would be me changing the rules fundamentally to allow me to do what I want to do. And I'd be checking with my opponent that they're cool with that and that we can have a fun game rather than me going, I'm changing the rules because I think it will be super powerful. And I'm going to ruin your game accordingly.
I mean, sadly, a lot of people who end up doing that don't think they're doing that because they're so blinded or don't understand game design, so
Yeah.
they can't see why. So, oh, I'm taking like this really good lore piece, and I'm taking like 18 of these units. And you're like, oh, 18 of the best units in the game. Yeah, because in this story, that's what they did. It's like, well, yeah, but you know,
Mm, mm.
um, Yeah.
Where's the fun in that? Yeah, okay, if that's so fun, let's swing it around. You play the other side, etc. And you're like, if you're not prepared to do that, no, I don't want to do that. Okay,
But
cool.
this is why match play gets played like, all the time, because
Yeah, and
it's
it's probably the most
ironically
common
the
format of
easiest
game.
way for two people to enjoy a game. But I do think even at my club, uh, I would like to be getting more of that narrative kind of approach into gaming. I played 40k the other night against someone who only really plays 40k at the moment, and it was fine. And he ruined me because it was my first game of 40k in like a year and a half, and the game's just completely changed. But also, I'm looking at the train thinking, oh, okay, oh yeah, we use these rules, and this rule set of terrain is added onto this game I'm playing, and it's like, can we just make it a bit more fun?
Mm,
And um, you know, he might have been up for it. Certainly not a bad guy by any stretch of the imagination, but maybe not in a place where he'd want to do that with his gaming either. So,
mm.
I kind of knew that going in, so I don't even offer it as a suggestion really, because so I know what kind of game I'm getting myself into.
And
Um,
events are going to, hopefully, certainly almost by definition, you're going to know what type of event it is.
well, I'm not sure you do all the time.
Ideally, you would
Yeah,
know what kind of event you're getting into, and hopefully, the event makes it clear what kind of thing it is.
yeah, and I think a lot of the time they don't. I think,
Interesting. You think that's more
well,
common than?
yeah, I don't know if it's majority, but it's certainly not uncommon for
Yeah.
events to tell you that this is a fun event. Please don't bring lists, or we will vet lists and return any ones that are too powerful. And it's like, okay, cool. I'm going to bring this list you've never seen before. How do you know how powerful it is? Uh, Also, how powerful in and of itself, or powerful in respect to the other lists that are coming, because that's a lot of work, and I can guarantee you people will get it wrong as well. I've seen stealth filth coming. Yeah, how many times do people write off a unit and then
Stealth filth, amazing.
yeah, maybe the person doesn't even realize they're doing it, that kind of thing. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, I really like this and this, and it's like, oh, actually, that's quite. And then also, I mean, it's so people talk about balanced lists for a reason in tournament gaming as being your best way of winning an event is to take a list that can deal with everything, because your skew lists are fine, but the chances are you've got a 1 in 5, 1 in 6 chance. If you run into your anti list, you can't win. So to win an event, taking a skew list doesn't work 80-90% of the time. So a
Mhm.
balanced list will do that. Oh, I lost track of where I was going there with that, but there we go. But
But well, we're talking about whether it's. I mean, I would have thought, speaking as a novice in the event space, that an event, almost by definition, is going to make it clear what kind of event it is. Now, that might be so far as it's saying, "Oh, this is a tournament versus this is a gaming weekend, or this is a story of this particular um, campaign, or whatever, this particular conflict in the heresy." Now, how the players individually approach that, and then how the organizer deals with that or doesn't, is where the nuance of it comes in, and where people's various good times or not, whether there are repeat events um, take place. So it becomes quite interesting about how they do that. But because I've overheard you having a conversation at our event where you were talking to people who were thinking about putting an event together or had done, and you were saying experiences you'd had where someone had brought a list and it turned out that list was proving very effective, or it was a bit of a it was on the radar. It was like, okay, this is coming in quite hard, and potentially this person's playing it quite hard. How about we mix that up and say, here's an extra this for the opponent because this has happened in the narrative event. This is in the story. I'm GM. Suddenly, your opponent's got a lot scarier because I'm playing the dungeon master, and actually the foe you're up against, I'm making it harder for you because what you've got, it's capable of taking it on, doing stuff like that. And you were sort of describing how you had done versions of that. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I think more than the listed player, some players only play one way.
I realised that as I was saying it, actually, and even as I was
It's
describing it, I was thinking, "Oh, hold on." Actually, it's about
it's
how the attitude someone's bringing to it.
yeah. You can bring like in first edition you can bring Titans, and um, inherently they had matchups where the opponent was like 60% of the list could score objectives, and that was it because they couldn't hurt you. But with the right player, they can still make a game of it. They can still
Mm,
choose not to play certain rules a certain way or not to do things. I could list off a bunch of names of people who would rarely, if ever, decide to tone down a unit or to take the least effective option
interesting.
uh, in a game. And I can see some old Facebook posts of people who've done very well at events recently where their names get mentioned. And sometimes those people hide behind theme as a
Mm,
well, my list's themed. What's the problem with that? Sometimes they know they're doing it. Sometimes they don't know they're doing it. I say that they're just their thought process is game mechanics.
mm,
Um, so I know that yeah, I could take I don't know, I'd take my space wolves and see an army and think, oh yeah, they can't stop what I'm doing. Okay, cool. Well, let's just deploy in a way that makes it harder for myself.
hmm.
You could do that. So it's not just list,
No.
it's the way it's played. It becomes really hard. Like, what event do people want to run? I say we really are rambling around topics, but um, we talk about setting out your um, your event pack in a
Mhm.
detailed way, but also it requires people to then read the event pack in the right way as well
Read and engage. I would say read it. You got to read it, and actually, and take it on board and
and
engage with it
understand
and
it.
commit
Yeah.
to it. Yeah, I understand it. Okay,
Well, yeah,
yeah,
because
understand the intent behind it.
well, hmm,
No,
intent. What is intent? Who decides intent?
fair enough. Yeah,
Right, how do I know what your intent is? People
yeah,
say, "Oh, this is definitely not rules as intended." It's like, "Oh, were you in the room?"
yeah.
Right?
Okay, and
They might have
as soon as
intended to work that way. They might not know how it works in game. They might have missed an important piece of information. They might have said, "Yeah, this is the way we want it to work," not understanding that there was another interaction somewhere else that
as
meant,
soon as you put in the word intent like that, you're down to interpretation,
yeah,
which is
absolutely.
problematic. Yeah,
And the worst thing is, even if you know what the intent is, someone else just got to take your word for it.
yeah,
Oh yeah, I was in the room. Oh, were you, mate? Okay, cool, nice. I don't
yeah.
think I think it's intended this way. Okay, cool. We're still in the same place you were. So if you're writing a pack and you want, I want this to be an absolute balls out tournament event, write it in there. Right, this event is designed to find who is the best player of Heresy. There are no rules on army. There are no army restriction rules. There are, everything is allowed. Um,
Have you ever
don't
seen
come.
that? Have you ever seen
Uh,
someone do that very thing?
well, if I've known there's a tournament, I have seen. Yes, yes.
Because I mean, it's got an appeal.
Element. I want to say, did Ben Greaves run it? They certainly had one. They were talking about two. Don't know if they did a follow up of a full on heresy tournament. Adepticon's done it. I think some person's done it at Adepticon. I've seen a handful of them. I think it's got a place. I think
Yeah, agree. Yeah, nothing
you
wrong with
know.
it at all. It's just
Also,
it's about clarity, isn't it?
yeah, we said it before. It gives someone a, a a place to go to do that as an outlet.
Absolutely.
There
Yeah.
are definitely what what I don't like. What really grinds my gears is oh yeah, we're doing a themed event here, and we're really, it's proper narrative, and we're setting it here. Brilliant. So please don't bring these unless you have to. Well,
unless
well,
you have to.
well. Well, what does that mean?
Mm.
That means, oh, okay. Oh, I just want to bring that. I'll bring that because by the time I get there, I'll have to bring it because I haven't done anything else. Or I've
Mm.
seen this is a tournament, but please don't bring hard lists. Like, well, is it a tournament or is it like
Yeah.
if you want to do that, then yeah, it was in the Age of Warhammer gaming community, in the Age of Sigmar gaming community, particularly the Warhammer Fantasy one, where you were like, perfect example would be Bobo's events at Element Games,
Oh,
well, the
okay. Yeah.
Northwest Gaming Centre beforehand, which were, I can't remember what we called them, but it was a series of events where there were there were lots of different restrictions and that were normal to other events, and there were some crazy rules changes. He gave every single player a free giant for one of the
Oh, yeah. You
events.
were describing this. This sounds
Yeah,
bonkers and really cool as a
yeah.
result.
There was one where he changed all the big spells to be a spell that summoned a giant. There was one giant. There was one free giant model in the whole event, and anyone who cast that spell wherever that giant was would immediately, when someone shouted Alakazam, that giant would be picked up, moved to the table where it was cast, put down, and the turn would play on until someone else cast that spell and removed it from there and put it somewhere else. I can't remember what other rules he did, but there were funky rules. So you went in and it was still a tournament, but he wanted to reduce the power of certain lists. So he went and comp packs were a thing for every event. Anyway, he wrote his own comp pack for those events, and you still got people. All the Wood Elf players would just moan that their army was too nerfed, and oh, Wood Elves
What is a comp pack for? I think I
composition
know,
pack.
but right. Okay. So
So
how to
you are
compile your
allowed
army?
maximum of 3 vehicles with a total armor value of
Right.
32. You are allowed um, a maximum of 3. You do see this, places. The event I'm going to, no Primarchs are allowed. Maximum 1 dreadnought per 1,000 points. Sometimes compacts can be there for a variety of reasons. The main reason I would ever use a comp pack is to stop negative game experiences. So
Hmm.
when you know certain interactions break the game, um, even in first edition, whole night armies were often not allowed because they were that, oh, I can't deal with it. I've only bought, I've got 2 units with las cannons and the rest of my stuff can't really hurt them. So great
Well,
game.
Titanic is saying we're not going to have the Porphyra. You can only have 2
Yeah,
Porphyrons, or
absolutely.
less, or not have them at all. That
Yeah.
kind of thing. Mm.
So, you know, a compact to stop negative game experience can be used for any event. Like, really good idea. But if you're doing if you specific, essentially it's this army's not allowed. We're doing it at, say,
Mm.
we're doing Siege of Terror, and we're only allowing the armies that we've seen in the lore. Fair enough. Whatever. Cool. Um, use a composition pack if you really want to change your army up, but put the restrictions in there. Tell people like what you expect. Or you can go the other way and have a soft way of um, adjusting what people bring, which is what I do, which is saying, cool, you can bring what you want, but it might not work how you want it to work based on what
That
else is at the
sounds
event.
cryptic,
Yeah, but that's fine.
and that's fine. That's the intent. Okay, cool.
Yeah, because,
Dangerous word, but that's what you intended.
well, yeah, I
Because
mean, obviously
I might step in and change something.
it's expanded more than that. It's like, yeah, you are allowed to bring anything you wish, but, in my pack, it will say it's a two-player game. You and your opponent have a responsibility to A, finish a game, B, enjoy the game. It's
Mm.
as much your responsibility as your opponent's to try and have a fun game.
Interesting.
And that
Mm.
doesn't always work. There are reasons why that, but down to the way you play the game shouldn't be. You might have a clash of
Mm.
personalities and things like that, but you should be able to be civil to each other and be able to tell people what you're doing and make it clear what's going on, all those kinds of things. And then I will say, war's not fair, and I reserve the right to throw all kinds of crazy stuff at you. Like, be prepared. If you don't like wild, crazy stuff happening in the game, guess what? Don't come to my event. It's not for you.
and I don't think that's a problem. I mean, I
Not a
think
problem.
that's having variety in events is a good thing. I've heard that criticism. Maybe that I think it was at 40K was that all the events are starting to look the same.
Oh, that's me
All
again.
the table setups was that you and I talking
Yeah, oh
about it?
yeah.
Probably
I
was
think it's dull.
saying that they're all starting to look the same. And actually, it's far better. I think I've heard Rob Symes say something similar. I'm saying actually, variety here is a good thing. To say this type of event is bonkers is about this. This type of event is bonkers in a completely different way. This type of event is completely
Yeah.
generic or standard, should we say? But you are going to be tested on you're going in deliberately to test yourself on your kind of
Mm.
gaming ability.
I mean,
Absolutely fine.
the one good thing with Heresy we've never had. I mean, we've never had like every event sitting at the same points. We've had stages where points levels have been on vogue, and because maybe a certain event uses certain points, and those like
Mm,
in Warhammer and Age of Sigmar, South Coast GT used to happen every April, and you'd see all the event packs post South Coast GT, like 60% of them would copy 90% of that pack because the guys knew what they were doing. And guess what? It's much less effort to borrow someone else's pack. But aside that, they might even change points though. Like, Heresy is say 3,000 points, 2,500 points, 2,750 points,
mhm,
3,250 points. There was a period where some vocal not quite a clique, but certainly some of the people who were in certain cliques were like, let's make this the summer of X amount of points. And it's like, well, why? Like,
mm.
why have it as a thing? Make all your events
Well, that
about
comes
those points. Cool.
that starts to
But
come into the point you were making last episode about there being a period where people were going. There were only so many events around the country. So let's talk about just UK specific, or whichever country one is in, and you might have people who were intending to go to all of those. If it's the same points value, they might be taking the same army to every single one, so it almost becomes more appealing rather than thinking, I've got to
yeah,
change my army list or whatever. But that's quite a niche scenario,
yeah, I think it was more
and
just some people,
even less relevant as the more events take place.
yeah, I think some people just thought that a certain points value hadn't been done much and
Mm,
was
mm,
cool, and then were not. They weren't trying to do it in a negative way. They were trying to be positive, but they were like, "Yeah, let's do this." And it's like, hold on, just let people do what they want. Let's not create this environment of pressure where people feel like they have to conform to a
mm.
single event. And please don't let every event be the same points values. I've run 250, 2,500 up to I don't know if I've done 350, 3,500, but over the various editions. But yeah, I've done lots of different stuff. Another way to kind of control what people are doing is you can let on like kind of how some scenarios might go, and you might and if you don't, you might write it into the pack. It's like, okay, there's going to be scenarios which require infantry to score the points. There will be some where vehicles can score the points, uh, and it might or there might be some where there's restrictions on what tighter restrictions. So again, what you're doing there is you're allowing people to bring different armies, but you're forewarning them that if you don't bring a little bit of everything, then if you want to do well in the game and help your side in the narrative or what have you, then you might be giving up 1 or 2 games before you've even started. So you can let people know what's happening. I mean, when 8th edition fantasy came out, there was a scenario where you counted up your general and the amount of banners on your army, and if it ever fell below, I think it was 4 for the points values they were playing, which might have been 2,500, 2,250. Either way, then you lost the game. Like once you are broken to a point. And a guy turned up, and they played. This game was played like it's often played turn game 6 because it could end early, so people could help pack up. And table 1 of an event, the bloke put his army out, and they went, "Oh, you've lost." And he's like, "What?" Like, well, you've only got 3 banners in the general, and that's it. You've lost.
Wow.
And he's like, "Oh, it shouldn't happen." It's like, well, it was in the pack, mate. It tells you what you were playing.
Oof.
Like
Yeah.
that is your fault. Like often people would make armies that were just on that limit, knowing that. they had some tough units or whatever, and they'll take that risk. But they knew coming in, it's their own fault.
Yeah, yeah, it was always there.
Yeah. You don't want someone having a bad experience on that, but you can only do
No,
so
you
much
might
as an
say,
event.
it was a honest mistake. Can I make this change? Can you give me 10 minutes?"
Yeah,
Or
I mean,
something like that. Yeah.
outside of a tournament, or oh, you know what? Cool, I've lost the game. Let's have a game. Does it matter?
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
yeah, absolutely,
um,
yeah.
I have seen in a Warhammer event in Birmingham, guy was famous for having his vampire lord killed by like the most stupid stuff. Like
Mm.
two Saurus once did it from fully wounded to fully hit health up to nothing in like 2 rounds. But he was playing this tournament game and this cannon shot first turn and he failed his lookout sir and his vampire lord died and he went, well, might as well call the game there then because I haven't had a turn yet and my army's about to fall apart.
Yeah,
And the bloke went,
amazing.
cool, we'll mark it down as a 20-0. Do you want another game? And then Chris Legg, I think it was Chris Legg actually, who plays Heresy now. He did exactly the same shot on his second game. Um, and I don't know why he did that because it was a game for fun. And failed his lookout, sir, killed his vampire turn one.
Oh my
And
god.
16 minutes into the round, they'd had 2 games already. Which if that was me personally, I would never have fired that second shot into
It-
the same target. I would have been quite happy. But but things happen, and
yeah,
yeah, I have those things where you go, cool, game's over. Do you want to re-rack, or
yeah,
do you want to
yeah,
do something? You can do that. It can feel a bit awkward, but there's lots of ways around it. So I think as an event organizer, for me, a lot of it comes down to no matter what you're doing, if you can put it in the pack in an honest, open way, and then work out how you're going to deal with the the one or two people who were like, oh yeah, I know the pack said that, but um, because no one reads packs. It's like people don't believe me when I tell them before they run events. Giles from Merchant Prince's before they did their doubles event. Uh, I think even before the event, he was like, now I get it. I get why you say read the pack.
I think I would be completely naive and assume that people would have read the pack, and then
I
hearing
don't
you
read the
say that,
pack
I think
every
that's a really
time
valuable thing.
fully. Like I'm not as bad as a lot of people, but I can be the guy going, what are we doing here again?
Yeah,
Um, particularly when you're busy in the
but you
lead
must
up
have to
to an
read it
event.
to some degree to be able
You
to
skim read it.
assemble an
How many
army.
points we playing? Cool. Yeah. What can I use? Yep. Cool. Okay. No worries. Brilliant. Cool.
Okay, yeah,
Did you read that one line in the middle of that big paragraph? And that's
no, I did
sometimes the
not. Yeah,
problem. It's
okay,
like, oh yeah, no, I must have missed that. Okay. Oh shoot. Or
we've got a problem.
or just not understanding. Like not, you can read something and it doesn't always make full sense the
Yeah,
first time
yeah.
you do it, and then let's say you get distracted, then you're like, oh shoot, it's an event in a week. Oh, 3,500 points. Yeah, cool, brilliant. Right, let's send it off. Excellent. So, but I say just put it in. But one thing you can do, one thing was it Anuj did when he ran his event? Maybe Nathan. Did they run it together? One together?
They
It
have
might have
certainly
been.
run events here at
Yeah, they've
Glasgow in
definitely
London
done
and stuff.
different ones. I think Anuj kept posting up snippets in the build up. He had a Facebook page for his event, and he was like, game three will be played on this planet, and it was repeating stuff that was already there. It was like, don't forget that um, only only infantry line scoring can
Mm,
score points on this mission, and like, cool. I mean, that takes a bit more effort, but again, really helping people. Like, I think that's a really good idea. Actually, I don't know if I'm
I do too.
organised enough to do that, but
Well,
um,
it also requires people engaging with whatever medium it is that you're
yeah.
doing. I mean, Tom reflected on that for Barbarous. He was like, actually, we had intended to release a load of information here. So many people left the WhatsApp group that it was a waste of time. And
Well, and
he,
again, why do people like big WhatsApp groups? I mean, this is again grumpy old Greg, I'm sure, but as soon as a WhatsApp group's got like, as soon as there's like, if I look away from my phone for 2 hours and I come back and there's 30 messages, I'm like, do one.
mm,
I'm not struggling to keep up with this, and because Tom could put out relevant information, it would be hidden. Um, I'm
yeah,
off. if your Discord group's got over, I don't know. Again, if your Discord group, if I come on to it, wake up in the morning and there's 600 messages to read, I'm not in a Discord group
Yeah,
anymore. It's not happening.
I left a couple of the WhatsApp group for the specific games in the London club. I was like, initially there was so much chat, and I just hated looking down and seeing X number of red messages
Oh,
on there. I was like, oh, I can't do it. It's calmed down a lot since then,
even worse
and
when
so
it's
I've
not
rejoined it.
relevant.
Yeah,
Like, it's bad enough when it's relevant. When it's not relevant, um, you know, hey ho.
well, we're sort of touching on. We've already touched on it a bit. The other points I had that I wanted to kind of cover is the classic of how do you prepare? How is it before, during, and after? How do you prepare for an event? How do you conduct yourself? What is something that you might need to think about at an event? And then what do you do after an event? Both from an attendee point of view and and you've touched on a lot of those points actually from an organizer's point of view. I mean, predominantly from the organizer's point of view, have a pack and try and encourage people to read it or draw their attention to specific points. Doing your homework, if you are a attendee, I think is quite key. I was aware of this thing called the workbook that Rob Symes put together as part of Honest Wargamer, and I found that really useful. Arguably, a lot of it common sense. I mean, we were
Yeah,
talking about it here. You forgot. You just reflected on the fact you forgot combat shields had a save. It's so easy to do. It's so easy, even if you're playing it all the time. If you're playing multiple games, you've almost got no chance. But multiple game systems. But even if you're playing a lot, it's so easy just to forget little rules. Having a little cheat sheet or having a little something just to give you those little reminders during the game
I'd
and
have.
doing your little homework beforehand is so important. I mean, every tournament,
It
I haven't
is.
been to a tournament. Every event I've been to, I've played a game beforehand to try and remind myself how to play the game.
Do you know when I'd remember those shields? The
When,
opponent's movement phase. Sorry, my movement phase. The turn after they'd all died, because that's when
amazing.
I'd look at my cheat sheet.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So that's not infallible, but it might be something. Even the very act. I mean, I've had that before. Even being in a lecture or something, being at school, being told, don't worry, you don't have to take notes because the notes are given out at the end. It's like, I do need to take notes because that's the way I learn it. Writing the
Sure.
cheat sheet or preparing for an exam or something. I mean, I'm making this out like it's much more of a big deal than it is. You don't treat these things like an exam. But the point stands. Doing the cheat sheet is often the way of
The
just
act in
reminding yourself
itself.
of the
Yeah.
rules. Exactly. Playing the doubles game where we were playing against Nathan and Rich. Great game. I learned more than you can imagine seeing that game. You and Nathan were playing on a slightly different level. Rich and I at points were sort of looking, going, "Yep, some stuff's happening, and I'm not sure how to follow it." You had those rules to hand mentally that
Mhm.
we didn't, and that slows. If that was a mismatch where one person knew it and the other person didn't, one, they're going to outplay them. Two, not going to be the best experience in the world. The more you can try and remember that stuff or have it's a more fluid experience, which might mean doing a bit of prep or having a cheat sheet or whatever suits you, just makes it more fun. So that you're not going, oh crap, I think there's something I need to go and look up here. Just give me a minute, and you're doing that every 5 minutes.
Yeah, I
It's
think
tough, isn't it?
had I been playing you in that game, we wouldn't have had that style of game. I
No.
think I think that's where some people don't read the room a little bit, and they're like, "Cool, I'm going to do this," and you know what happens most of the time when people do that? Their opponent goes, "Yeah, cool, dude," like,
Mm,
and doesn't bother to engage on those. It just goes, "Yep, you do whatever you want, cool," because that's not the game I'm playing.
mm,
And at where I am, I can't engage with that, so I'll just not switch off per se, but I'll just let it roll over my head.
mm,
And yep, cool. And this is often where you get he was doing this, and it's like honest mistake from player A, but
mm.
player B doesn't know enough
Doesn't
and
know enough to call
to
it. Yeah.
contest it, and isn't in that game mode to then go and look it up. Most of the time I'm quite happy to go, cool, that sounds good, right? Cool. Can I look that rule up? Okay, cool. Oh, it does work like that. Brilliant, awesome. Or oh no, it doesn't quite work how you think it works. Or
Mm,
or
mm,
you've forgotten that I've taken out X thing which stops that working and what have you. But yeah,
mm,
if I just roll up on a Tuesday night at my gaming club and I'm playing, Jack there who plays a handful of Heresy games a year, then I'm not playing that same game. Unless I know them really well and I can that's a different story then. When you're very familiar with a friend, you can get away with stuff that you can't so much with other people because
No,
you know
you don't know them,
they're
and you
also
don't
the
know where
person
they're
who
coming from. Yeah.
no they're also prepared to go, Greg, leave it out. Yeah, or if they're not in the mood for
I
that,
mean,
they'll be
that's
like,
the thing, isn't it? That's a human interaction. That's the beauty of
yeah,
these games. We're interacting with other people, social contract, and all that. The ability to do that with someone, and is tricky to say. I mean, I've had to have that conversation with close friends of mine, and the ability to do that without offending the other person, far harder to do that with someone you've never met is with someone you've got a long-standing understanding and relationship with. I agree completely, and not everyone's up for that either. Are all capable of doing that. What would you say then is a key preparation that you as an event organizer would do? What's the thing that you would say is the thing you would be doing the night before, not in a panicked way, but you're like, I must make sure this is done to make this as fun as possible for both me and the
that's
attendees.
so dependent on where you're running your event and what you need. You need a way to get information across, whether it's you standing at the front shouting it, whether it's a computer with a screen, whether it's a projector, whether it's handed out pieces of paper. You need to be able to get that information out to the players so they
Hmm.
know what's going on. Game one, like where do they find the missions, how are you doing it? As we stand now, if I'm running an event, I want to look at maybe being paperless,
Hmm.
looking at how much paper can get thrown out at a small event, say a small event, a reasonable size event, like we went to. How many bits of paper were there going around the room? Yeah,
Hmm.
lots of stuff that gets put in packs is people copying other people's packs because that's what you do when you're running your first event.
You're like,
Sensible,
that's cool. I want to do
brilliant.
that. Yeah, that was
So
cool and worked really
bring
well.
in
Yeah.
3 or 7 copies of your list to an event is because back in tournaments you'd hand over a copy to your opponent so they can read through it, and it's as
Totally
much a
sensible.
checks and balances, one for the TO, one for you, one for each opponent. Realistically, even then, do you need to bring 8 copies of your
Mm.
list when you're playing Heresy? A lot of events now you don't even need one. Like you need your one. You don't even need to hand one in. I always say it's good to be able to share your list in some form because someone might go, "Oh, you've got that interacting with that. How have you done that?" Because this rule doesn't allow you to
Well, I
do
thought it
that,
was
that kind
quite
of thing.
cool at the event we were at that it was an unspoken thing, but it was done at the beginning of every game, and we all just did it. Where you took them through your army, took
Again,
them
I
through
think
the army, what it was, and how it played.
that's yeah. So that's an assumed knowledge aspect that
Mm.
again gets forgotten about when I'm playing 40k or Age of Sigmar, because again I play semi regularly with Age of Sigmar, less regularly with 40k, but I'll be playing people who might be in similar boats. Okay, okay, cool. I'm using Mega Gargants. Have you played Mega Gargants before? And they go, yep, I've got an army of them. Brilliant, awesome. I've got these 4 dudes. Cool. Thank you very much. That's all you have to do. Don't have to tell him any more
Mm.
than that. He knows what he's doing. No, never played them before. Can they walk over people? Oh yeah, they can walk over people, but they can't do it in this circumstance. This circumstance. Um, you know, I do this and I do that. It might not be everything. Someone will
Mm.
go, I'll walk up to an Age of Sigmar table, or 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 whatever. My mate goes, I've got a new army. Cool. I've got Daughters of Cain, and I'm like, okay, cool. Just tell me roughly what you do. Okay, I run at people really fast. I've got a bucket load of attacks, but I'm 1 wound each, not much armor save. Cool. Have you got any shenanigans around moving out of sequence or being able to charge
Mm.
further than your movement plus a charge move? Yep, this one dude can give this. Okay, cool. So I've got to worry about that one dude doing that one thing over there, but the rest of it I can just move and assume you can't charge me if I stay out. Yep, cool. Don't need to know every rule you've got, but I need to know that. And that's playing with an experience. But some packs will have that written in. Like some people will have a here's how you play the game. First, greet, say hello. 2, explain armies. 3, talk through terrain. 4, they might
mm.
break it down to that. I think I always put in there something about going through each other's lists, pulling out any things. Again, kind of all under that aspects of it's each player's responsibility to have a fun game.
I think,
And
and that's, I mean, it should go as it should be unwritten, but I'm not sure it's a bad thing to put that in and then put that in. And what does that mean? And here are some things that we're going to do at this event to make that more likely to be the case. Like, imagine
but
if we were
yeah,
playing against someone and they didn't know what the Space Wolves advanced reaction was. And then you
yeah,
go,
absolutely.
aha, caught you out. It's a shame you did that because I'm doing this now, which
Exactly.
would be an attitude that you might see at certain events. It would
I
be
would say
very
I,
unlikely, I think, but it could happen.
you can see a heresy event because some people can see that as part of the game.
Mm,
I would actually say, regularly 40k will get called out. Top level 40k is all cutthroat. I would reckon, particularly with Age of Sigmar, certain high notable 40k players, one very local to us, to me, might try and get every advantage you can. But Age of Sigmar, the top tables of a UK Age of Sigmar event, you will see players measuring out their own like kind of how far do you want to be away? I want to be 9 inches away. Cool. Yeah, let me help you with that. There's 9 inches away all around there.
mm.
Oh, you could come this way and do that because they know that the chances are the person's going to reach that conclusion. It's just they're going to save them 10 minutes of trying to do it.
You're
So the
helping the
game
game
can
move
move on.
forward as quickly as
So, oh, you've
possible. Yeah.
moved them up. You've moved him within this far. Did you mean to do that? No, cool. Because I said when I move them, I want to be outside 9. Cool. Yep, shove him back a touch.
Now,
That is
this
a
two friends of mine playing a game of Heresy. I turned up knowing that they were playing this game, and I turned up to join them for drinks afterwards. And when I joined, they had reached a point where he was about to one guy was teleporting in a load of custodians, and the other player didn't tell him that he had some form of teleport jammer or something like that. That was going to be, was it Airy Shrikes? Or maybe it was the other way around.
yeah.
But anyway, yeah, the Airy Shrikes. And he didn't tell him, and then he did it. And he's like, "Okay, I've got these. This is now happening." And he's like, "Well, had I known that, I wouldn't have put them there. So I'm going to do this differently." And he was like, "Well, no, that's not how that would work in conflict, in a combat situation." And you're like, "Yeah, but we're not in a," and you're like, "Oh, I'm not sure about that." And you're like, that's why I think we've talked about this before repeatedly about the importance of saying, "This is what I'm trying to do. Is there any shenanigans here, or is there anything here?" Talking about
Yeah.
what you're trying to do, what the intent is. I thought that wasn't the best way to play because it was essentially doubling down on the gotcha. And you're like, well, who's really here for that? Two mates playing a game. Like, you really here to do that? You really going to play it that way? Come on,
Two
rein it
people
in.
on very different wavelengths
Mm,
playing a game that certainly um, old Warhammer when it had hidden magic items that there was a game within a game, but they were restricted to oh, okay, that dark elf lord is going to have, or that vampire lord was always a funny one. He's going to have something on him. Um, and so the game within the game came like, well, can I cast a spell that hits him to see whether he's got magic armor or a ward save? Because if he's got a ward save, then he
oh,
can't have a
cool.
100-point magic item, which worries me. Or charging, moving 5 Chaos Hounds up in front of a huge unit of Graveguard, so that when the Graveguard charge and kill the dogs, the bloke goes, take them off, and they go, okay, but did you have flaming attacks when you did that? And you go, yeah. Does it matter? Well, no, it doesn't matter right now, but it matters that I'm not going to charge my regeneration unit into you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that becomes part of the game. There's you can play those games with two people who are, you can play chess, take your piece off too late, sorry. But
Yeah,
I think you need to make sure that those two players are, it's all about being on the same wavelength.
yeah.
Um, Certainly, if
And
someone
as an
did that
event
to me,
organizer, the
I'd be like,
principal way
nah.
to do that is with the pack.
Yeah, I mean, I would, I would think it's rare for anyone to have that. kind of approach outside of a very like it's almost like a small subset has plays their own game and does it that way. I think it's almost pretty common to play a bit more open. In fact, the place I would see something like that more than events is your local games workshop or
Interesting.
local club where there's you get that one or two guys who's always a bit like, yeah, cool, got you with my cool thing, and they're
Yeah. Okay.
very
That's
much
club
like,
play. Mm.
yeah, very much. Um, Even less at clubs, more at shops, kind of thing, where they haven't necessarily got a. Clubs tend to have a slightly stronger community. It definitely used to be a kind of thing you'd see at a Games Workshop where there'd be that one guy who was king of his Games Workshop, thought he was the best player in the world, whatever, and then would go to a tournament and get his rear handed to him for 5 games. And
That's a really interesting point because one I hadn't thought about because that's a real key difference between events and games that you might otherwise be playing and how you might be doing comparing them with clubs and, as you say, stores. Because there aren't that many stores. I suppose friendly local gaming stores. Those people who were lucky enough to have those within reach. You get that, but you don't tend to get games workshops now where you're playing games in them. The model
not quite
that
the
they have
same
for the
way.
store isn't doing that. We're talking about. I mean, both you and I have been playing these games for 30 years or more. And there was definitely a period where that was a thing. I remember that, and there was a community of sorts around a Games Workshop and the types of games you played in there. And you've got far more experience of this than I have, having both worked there and played in them more frequently. But I'm aware of that and aware of a lot of people talking about, and every experience I can think of. Well, no, that's not true. Most of the experiences I can think of that have been relayed and talked about are exactly what you're talking about, where you had a guy. When if you hear people jokingly refer to that guy syndrome, etc., tended to be in that type of environment. It was
Yeah,
very rarely at an event.
almost. Almost always. I'd have
Mm,
people tell me
interesting.
about how bad 40k events are, and I'm like, no, that guy over there is the guy that you're moaning about, and you
Mm,
don't see him. I remember playing a Warhammer event down in Brighton, and it was that it was the same one with the Graveguard and the Hounds actually, and this guy. Oh no, it was the other way around. That's right. I had the Graveguard, and I was seeing. Yeah, I charged a unit of dogs into a chaos unit to see if they had a flaming banner because I had a regen banner, and this guy spent the first 10 minutes, 12 minutes, 20 minutes telling me how he never loses games at his club and all this. And I was like, okay, cool, whatever. I think my army would win this. I normally play Chaos. This is the kind of army I play well, would beat that Chaos army. Let's see how it goes. And I think turn 3, he was asking if he was allowed to quit the game to the TO, and the TO was
wow.
saying, no, no, you can't just concede. Um, because he was basically the local bully boy, like not in a mean way, but
Mm,
he was like, I go down my GW, I'll never lose. Hey, big fish, very very small pond.
mm,
Um, and his ego, whatever he needed to do, his ego needed him to do that. Um, yeah, and he wasn't particularly adept at losing the game in a gracious manner either, as I schooled him with some very fairly basic tactics, to be honest, because it was the
yeah.
first time I'd ever used that undead army. But yeah, there was a guy at our club who was always like, "Oh, I probably told this story." In 8th edition, the Watchtower was a magic item that you could set up. Was it even? Or it might have been the scenario Watchtower, where there's a Watchtower in the middle of the building. Whoever held the Watchtower at the end of the game won the game. He's like, well, there's no way I can lose it with my ogres. I'm going to put 24 ogres in the Watchtower. There was no limits on size. According to official GW rules. Often at events they would put a limit on size. But I'm going to put 24 ogres in there, and I'm stubborn, and no one gets any rank bonuses, and all my ogres get to attack, so or however many, so no one can break me out of there. And the local guy at the club, who was okay as a player, went, okay, I'm going to challenge him, and I'm going to bring my Empire army with 2 steam tanks and 2 great cannons, and every time a cannon hits a building, it does d6 cannonball hits, which can all kill an ogre. So here's 4d6 potential like ogre killing hits a turn, and
Amazing.
again that guy pretty immediately was like, well, that's not fair. And it's like, well, when you're going to play those games, you're
Yeah,
going to get the game where it comes around and bites you in the rear.
yeah.
Um,
Someone's having a mechanic that's going to counter it. Yeah.
yeah,
Which, if
and
you're like, cool, that's a really good idea. I didn't anticipate that as an alternative. I love what you're doing. Um, congrats, kind of thing. Then that's
I
fine.
think, and I think if you listen to podcasts, and if you're immersed in the wider hobby, I think even just by osmosis, you're going to pick up more of this stuff when you
Mm,
go to an event. Like if you listen to this podcast, and when we do talk about gaming, we talk about balance lists, we talk about skew, not necessarily taking skew lists because they can have options, or if you are taking a skew list, be aware that, and by skew list, we mean you do one part of the game really well and, two or three parts not so well. Well, it's going to work 3/4 of the time, but the other quarter of the time, you've the shoes on the other foot. Um, you're going to play in a manner where you again are trying to be proactive during the opponent player's turn in helping them, not helping them beat you, but helping them do what they say they want to do and things like that. There's an art to that. Like you're not going to get it right every time, and it takes time. You're probably going to learn how to question how people play their rules. The amount of times I've asked to look at books, or um, I've said, "Oh right, cool. I didn't think it worked like that." And we said in that game with Nathan, there was a couple of times where like, "Cool, you might be right. I'm still going to look the rule up because, as you say, when you write it down for your cheat sheet, when I look it up, it might stick in my head
oh my god,
that
yeah,
I've,
yeah,
and also I might get the second part of that rule, which I didn't know
yeah.
happened, and what have you. Um, if you're, I think the real culture shock comes from the people who are like, "Oh yeah, cool, we've been playing loads of Heresy. Oh, I've heard about an event nearby. Oh, should we go?" And then you come out of your very small play group and you move into a much larger pool where there are, there's much more data. There's much more
Mm-hmm. Much more
kind of
experience, right?
experience. There's
Familiarity.
also, yeah, a collective kind of acceptance of a certain way of doing things, and it's not
Oh,
always
that's
the
true.
case.
Yeah. Mm.
But you understand early on, and you regularly hear people, "Oh, we went." They play a completely different game. I remember when the um, Warhammer European Team Championship, when England started really going to that, it was like, whoa, the things you can do in this game, like which are completely abhorrent to a narrative gamer. Like you could take two 50-point eagles and position them in front of a unit that's 10 wide in such a way that that unit could charge neither of them. Like,
Amazing.
and it was legal. And European team championships played in a way that went, cool, yeah, it's legal, which people didn't even think about doing in the UK because we didn't at that time. So they had to learn a different way to play Warhammer.
Mm, mm.
And they bought some of it back, some for better, some for worse. Um, but it opened their eyes to like, whoa, okay, cool. you know, never never considered it before that point, that
I think
kind of thing.
that style of game has anecdotally been less common with heresy.
It has, but it does bleed down into interpretations of rules or the ways, because we have a complex game system where if you want to find out how uh, rules interaction A works, you might actually have to look at rules interaction Q and rules interaction Y because it's a rules interaction that actually happens in the combat phase, but also in this within psychology or weapons rules or what have you, and those things they don't they're not they're not deliberate, maybe they're not quite as cutting edge, but they are just played and accepted in different ways,
Mm,
and you have to then be able to kind of work out a way of dealing with those things.
interesting.
I regularly see people go, "Oh yeah, we've been playing this rule wrong," and I've seen it the other way. I've seen the small group back when, again, Warhammer, when Tomb Kings came out, when Eighth Edition, when overruns were a thing and whatever. Um, you could overrun if you wiped a unit out, but technically, according to the rules, you couldn't overrun if a unit crumbled. So a Tomb King player could get a unit charged in the flank, but because there's a champion at the front and blah, 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 the way the rules work, which might not be just the way the rules work, might not be planned, means that you can't kill the final guy of a unit, and he crumbles. Like the charging unit doesn't get to overrun, and everyone in the community was like, "Well, no, that's stupid. That's not how it's played." And this small group were like, "Well, that's how the rules say it works." And it's like, "Oh no." And then GW came out and were like doubled down on the way they'd written the rule, and all of a sudden, the tactic of putting your sergeant at the front of a train of 5 skeleton horsemen to pin a unit in place became a thing. And then within a few months, GW changed it, and we're like, "It's a really dumb
Yeah.
way of doing it." And it's like,
Actually, good, but
yes,
yeah,
yes, it
that is what
was.
we intended. But
Um,
okay.
well, I don't even know if it was. Again, was it what they intended,
Yeah,
or was
fair
it
enough.
how they
Yeah.
decided the rule should work once the question came up?
Hmm.
Because people will go, "See, I was right," and it's like, well, I don't know if you were right, but they've
You
decided
weren't
to
right
go that
then, but you
way.
might be right now. Yeah.
You're right when the answer
Yeah.
comes out.
What were
I'm
you
not
right
sure you were.
about? Yeah.
Yeah. So those kind of things as well, and heresy has a lot of obscure instances where you can get strange things happen because of the nature of a rule set, which is wordy at times and maybe overly complicated at times, but also can't cover every single eventuality, because there are so many variables, things like that. So I think when you're going to an event, let's say you're listening to this, you might think some of what I've said is rubbish. Fair enough, cool, but yeah, that even then, that means you've thought about it,
Yeah.
which is
Yeah. I
fine.
agree.
Like you're in that process of like, oh, actually, how would I handle that? Oh, I think Greg's wrong about that. Okay, cool. Well, you've had a thought process to go for it. I think it's quite rare that anyone walks into the tournament, to the event scene with eyes wide, wide shut, as it were. Um,
Mm.
but it does happen that you do occasionally get these people who come out of nowhere, and every now and then, I say they go, "That's not how that all works," and you go, "Yeah, of course it is." And of course, I'm sitting here playing games since for 30 odd years, and someone goes, "Yeah, come on, of course that works. It's worked like that since second edition or third edition, sorry." And it's very variables on that, and you go, "Actually, no, they have changed that rule slightly." And the person who's come out of the sticks, the yokel, as it were, comparative wise, teaches me the rules different to the way I've been playing it. And then
Particularly if
you
they've
tell
come to
someone
it
else, you tell
fresh.
someone
Yeah.
else.
Rather than you bringing all
Yeah.
the
And
baggage
then
of
all of a sudden,
30
the
years
whole
of
game,
playing. Yeah.
yeah, all the heresy community goes, "Oh my God, like this thing is now really good because no one's
Yeah.
noticed that
It's
this
small, but
happens."
it's made a difference. Yeah.
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 So it's not like it's all one way,
No.
at all.
No.
But and then also you get those mavericks who, again, we often talk about. We earlier in the show we were talking about the sanguinary guard, and like someone brings out a unit that's been written off, but they use it in a slightly different way,
Yeah.
and it's like, oh, hold on, like no one really takes that unit, but that's because they've been trying to fit the square peg in a round hole, and actually there's a square hole over there. You just
Yeah.
need to be putting it
Totally.
in the right place, or you need to be slotting it into the right army, or what have you. So
And that can
there's lots
also
of
happen as the
positives that
game
way.
evolves, where suddenly, I mean, Legions Imperialis is sort of doing that a bit at the moment, where suddenly another detachment or a unit type comes along, totally
Uh,
changes the relevance of certain other units. Like people are like, oh, there's no point in having these things that destroy this. Well, there will be
yeah,
when this thing comes along later. Now, obviously, we're making certain predictions that are pretty logical in the case of Legions Imperialis because we know what the range is. We know what certain models and things are likely to be introduced, and can speculate on what the rules are. But particularly with something like that, I mean, you think of the number of vehicles and things that were introduced, that we now have in 28 millimeter or what Age of Darkness scale. Um, I wouldn't be surprised to find, hopefully, with if Legions continues to be popular, they start introducing big stuff again that we've never seen before, and then suddenly operates in a way that hasn't been seen before, and then units that were written off that were not very powerful or subpar in some way suddenly are thrust into the limelight as being effective. And I think that's where sort of reflecting on these the way events play out and the way you play in them, um, and what you're trying to what your enjoyment is of those events, I think is quite a good thing to think about, which I think
Yeah,
you're exposed to, like you say, through by listening to podcasts and similar, but also just by going to them and taking part in them.
and I think there are people who are intimidated by going to these events
Oh yeah,
for a variety of the reasons we talked about. Like they don't feel they know the rules well enough, or they don't think you know, like all the people
I
know
was
each other. They
absolutely
all
one of them. Yeah.
they all know what they're doing, and it's like, well, we'll soon prove that one wrong. No matter, you know, how many rules did I get wrong? I didn't even use any of my combat shields I paid for. Like,
Mm.
it's fairly simple, but uh, yeah, and we've kind of, I don't know, we've moved around. Maybe we needed a bit more structure to this topic, but
Well, I mean, yeah, you can do, but I think there's some value in exploring a topic in
yeah,
real time, if you will.
I think
Yes,
if you
one
are,
could.
I think so an event organizer, I think you need to be explicit in if you have a vision for your event, uh, you need to be explicit about it because people will do what they want at the end of the day. And if you say, "Oh, please don't," that's not a no. That's sure, crack on at the end of the day. Uh, if you're going to these events and you want to do something a little bit different, then I would say ask. Like
Mm,
you might not get, you'll find if what you're doing is deemed to be, it depend. It does depend how much work the event organizer wants to put in as well. But there's no harm in asking. Um, if you're worried about an event, or if you're unsure because there is a vague pack, message that person though. That's their own fault. If they've made a vague pack and they get loads of questions because it's not explicit, then that's their own fault. And crack on. You know, I'd have no problems with that if I did that.
no, and
What you'd
that
find
also
is after what
makes
the
their next
second,
pack better.
yeah, well, you'd find after like the second question, a good EO would go, right, I've had two questions about this one specific thing, which I thought was really
Yeah,
clear. So it's obviously not clear. Um, or
I've
it's either
updated
not,
it, and yeah,
yeah.
please re-download the pack.
I mean, as an experienced EO with a lot of different people who've been to my event, for me, it would depend on who asked the question. um, there are certain people I know over the course of my gaming, if they asked a question trying to push a limit, I'd just be like, okay, I know your game.
Yeah,
I know you don't
you're now
even,
on my radar,
I know you don't even mean
and you
it.
said there was no harm in asking a question.
No, there isn't because that tells me that I've got to keep an eye on someone. So, you know, and again, that might not be a malicious reason to keep an eye on someone. It might be okay, this is how they view X, right? That's
Mm,
not quite in line with how I view X. So I would just make sure that when we're doing those relevant things, I'm like, oh, might hover around that table for a little bit and just, you know, or in my case, I might make sure that I put X player up against X person because they will not let them get carried away or we'll be able to deal with it or what have you.
mm, mm.
Uh, and those things come through experience. But I think running an event, I don't believe it's hard. I believe it can look hard. Running a tournament's easy. Like, what in terms of not of getting terrain and stuff? Okay, that can be tricky and what have
I
you.
think it's also easy to underestimate.
I think there's work involved. I don't think it's hard work.
Interesting. Mm.
I think you have to be prepared to do to write a pack. Like for me, it takes me ages to write a pack because of the nature of I am and because I want to try and close off those loops where I can. Um, coming up with scenarios. You can go and just pick scenarios out of the book. You can do it. It's fine. There's no problem with that. You can make up your own scenarios. I'm in between. I go and steal scenarios. I might steal them from different game systems, but that's not hard work. It's work because I've got to go and read through all the different game systems and decide how they all fit together. But it's not hard work. It might push you into areas where you're not comfortable, and things like that, in being decisive with someone or standing up and talking. And maybe you do it with someone who is good at those things, and you run the event, but they're the front person for it. There's those kind of things you can do as well. I mean, the biggest thing I've ever had was, like, all the time I get people like London GT, people are like, "Oh, you're so in control of the event," and I'm like, not really, but but what you do is you stand up in front of people. Once you can get to the bits you can do, cool. Game three, I've got enough people here to start game three. Right, stand up. Here's what we're doing in game three. We're doing this, crack on. And then I run off and I put out about 3 or 4 little fires whilst people are playing games and no one sees them. And then when the printer stops working, and then when Emma says, "Have you done this?" And I'm like, "Oh shoot, I haven't done any of that." Right? People are playing games, so they don't see that bit. And then when I walk around, someone goes, "Greg, how's this work?" And I'm like, "Works like this." They go, "Does it? Because of this?" And I go, "Oh no, you're right. Cool. Works your way. Fine." But you do it with just a level of confidence, and people think you're in control of what you're doing. They say fake
That's
it till you
easier
make
said than
it.
done, but yeah.
It is. It is to a point.
People build careers on that whole.
Yeah. But also, I think there's a case of just backing yourself. Like, no, this is the way it's working. Cool. And well, we've got Group A think this, Group B think this. Cool. Okay. Well, this is how it's going to work. I think
Yeah,
this. You know, let's
this is
ask
the
the
way this is
FAQ
working
team
today.
later on. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
I made a decision. Cool. Also, I mean, one of the big things I put in the event pack, I'm like, you need to look up the rule yourself, and
Mm,
yourself, really. If I come over, I'm going to make a decision. If it's not if I can't find it in the book, or even if I can't be bothered to find it in the book because if you haven't been bothered, why should I?
mm.
I'll make a ruling. And if that ruling isn't right, well, tough.
Doesn't
I,
matter.
I,
That's what the
I will
ruling
tell
is
you
in
that.
this event. Yeah,
I always used to say, if you've got a, if you
may have been
if
a
you've got
bad
a
call,
question,
but it's a
yeah,
call.
if you've got a question here, I might let Emma decide. Like, there's your threat. You should be able to look it up in the book. Again, do I go, "Oh, how does this rule work? Oh, Tom, how are you doing this? How's this rule work? Okay, it works like that." I mean, we have one around how the scenario works. That's a different story because that's written specifically by the event organizer, and I happen to guess correctly that it would be based on a 40k mission, so it would work like a 40k mission. But I didn't know that until I went and asked the question.
Mm, mm,
But when it's actual rules in the book, your first point of call is to look up the rule in the book. We used to have Ben Johnson, who works for the Age of Sigmar design team, rules people now. When he would do it, he would literally walk up to the table and say, "What do the rules say?"
mm.
And that was his answer, and that's become like the quote we use now at the club. So how does this work? What do the rules say? And if you can come back to me and say, "I'm not sure, it's unclear, it's not in the rules." Oh,
That
okay,
happens.
fair enough.
That happens
Yep.
in a wide range of walks of life, doesn't it? I mean, that's a fairly common thing in
But that,
construction in my day job. You get that you're getting people doing yeah. What they ask questions and they think because they're asking the person who in theory is in authority, and then you get more or less polite ways of saying, "Well, read the specification, read the rules,"
exactly.
and
Yeah.
you're like, yeah, just read it. You're asking because you didn't look it up, or it can't always be the case. Some people are actually asking, "I don't understand the way this is
Sure.
written."
Yeah. But
That's a
also,
different question.
when I was running events regularly, that question would get written down and put on an FAQ that I would use. So it's like,
Mm.
oh, cool, there's a rules issue here that might come up again. So I will I'll answer it. I'll work out an answer, and I can add it to the pack.
And therefore things become. I mean, that's where you see some packs or some events where people are running regular events. and you see those packs start to become, or particular ways of playing the game perhaps, start to become more prevalent and almost adopted more widely. You've already
Yeah,
mentioned about people borrowing from each other, yeah, to get this. Makes perfect sense. But it goes
yeah,
even further when it's like, oh, that's a whole different game mode now. That's a
sure.
way of doing it,
Yeah.
and then you get different tournament scenes.
I think with those, you've got to not be afraid to like. Back in first edition, you had the Varangian guys put out quite a good FAQ pack that got taken on and used, but there were two or three things in there which I think they got wrong, actually wrong. Like
Mm,
in terms of they were trying to get the rules right, not they were trying to create the rules to work the way they thought they should work. So yeah, there were things about can a captain take this, and I'm like, well, no, it can't. And they were like, yes, it can. And I'm like, well, okay, cool. I will take the Varangian pack, but I will make sure that I review the rules, because it's my event and I want it to run the way I want my event to run. Which is also, I think, something you should do within reason, because again, it's all very well saying it's my event, I'm going to run it the way I want an event to run, and two people want to come to your event.
yeah,
Like
or you
that's
run that event
obviously,
and never again. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Um, that's obviously something you need to think about. But if if I'm putting my name on something, then everything within that is a reflection on me. And even if it's something people don't like, cool, fine. I want it to be you're not liking the way I wanted to do it, not you're not liking the way, you know, Arnold wanted to do it, which I didn't actually care about.
Yeah,
So I think ownership of that is also
which I think is
something
also
to think
true
about.
as a participant. If you're a player at this thing, you are. I mean, you see lots of people discussing this, but I mean, the prize it's that I certainly would be gunning for is best sports. You want, if you're putting your name will be, remember you are representing yourself obviously by attending that event. I personally would want to be thought of well in those environments, not okay, here comes that guy. You don't really there to be intimidating, I don't think,
No, no. You
in
know
those
what?
environments.
Much like calling back to earlier in the show, much like watching that YouTube video, that TED Talk changed the way I
Hmm.
interact with people. I was playing a Warhammer event down in Brighton, and I I think it was Daniel Gibbons, bless him. I'd played him a couple of times and always had bad luck, and I charged my Chaos Knights into a unit of skeletons back in sixth or seventh and rolled appallingly, and then they outnumbered me, so I automatically broke, and then I rolled really badly and they got run down, and it was like that shouldn't have happened. Like, and I got really frustrated, and I don't know if I got angry, but I was definitely frustrated, and I was raging a little bit. Um, I thought, hold on, this guy is 5'5" and slight, and I'm 6'2" ish, around there, and big built, and I'm got a shaved head, and I'm wearing a football shirt, and I'm
That
getting,
Canistello was a choice, and
yeah,
the
and my
string
voice is
burst.
getting
Yeah.
raised, and I'm getting agitated. I was like, this could be really intimidating, and it, and I was like, I have to stop doing this quite the same way. Now, do I get frustrated with dice at times? Yeah. Do I rant a bit at dice at times? Yeah. But try not to do it in a way that's could be perceived as being aggressive
Or
or
just in a way
it's
that's not going to make it fun for the person.
yeah,
If
exactly.
you're cheering every success of yours and sort of jeering every success of your opponents, or do whatever, doing that can get pretty wearing pretty quickly. It's like,
Yeah,
just
oh yeah, for sure.
don't be a dick, I mean,
Yeah. And there are
but
times when, you know what, the game's against you. And the event
yeah.
I won, Warhammer event I won, at one point I've ended up picking up a dice and throwing it, pretending to throw it really hard at a wall and didn't throw it, but I threw it. I was just like, I just have to like, right, cool, that's gone. That's out of my system.
Mm.
That dice is never getting used again. Let's crack on, you know. And it doesn't become a thing, and it's not. doesn't feel like it's directed anywhere, and
Mm.
it doesn't cause a problem. Should I have thrown that dice? Maybe not, but but I I was
You
bottling something up
probably
in
wouldn't
there.
have done it, and you talk about reading the room as well. You probably wouldn't have done that if you had a certain energy, certain vibe coming from your opponent. If your opponent's of a
Yeah,
certain mindset, I mean, I conducted myself very differently with different people I have played against.
yeah, for
Whereas if
sure.
you think, okay, we're a kindred spirit here, I think we can go here in the types of conversation and the type of way, but the type of behaviour. If you're checking yourself like that, I mean, I think that's something to sort of think about, and or that you experience at events, which is why I think they're very healthy because you're exposing yourself to more of that.
And yeah, and it goes the other way, right? If someone's quite reserved and whatever, um,
Absolutely,
or
yeah.
or looks a bit like not, looks a bit like they got something on their mind, they also might not want you jumping up and down and
No, no,
laughing and
exactly.
joking when they're succeeding. Like, some people can be brought out of their shell. Some people might have something going on, don't want to be brought out of their shell, and that can be just as frustrating and
Mm.
off-putting, as you say, reading the room, and that's not easy for everyone.
No,
And,
it's not at all. But
and
it's something that you're going to encounter.
yeah, even for people who are good at it, like it's not easy every time. People
No.
make mistakes and stuff. So just it is a social game. Ironically, for all the jokes and the memes and
Yeah,
and
all
we
the
know those
stereotypes
guys,
that go with it. Yeah,
but those stereotypes tend to be of younger people. And I
yeah.
worked in GW, and some of those people who came into the gaming club then were those people. And now I play role-playing games with them twice a week, a couple of times a month or whatever, and I play them at Warhammer, and we go out to the pub or whatever,
They're not
and
the
it's
people they
fine.
were.
And they're not the people they were, in part because they've had to spend a lot of time socializing,
Well, exactly.
and they learn how to read social cues to a point. Some people are
Yeah,
good, some
to
people
the
are less
point,
good.
and that they do still have to take morale checks to conduct those activities, interactions.
Such a nerd line. Anyway, yeah,
I
let's leave
feel,
that
I
there.
feel I feel we're going to be repeating ourselves if we
No,
continue this
no.
right here. So I think that's a good place to call that one. But I think that's been an interesting conversation. If anyone
Yeah,
disagrees or thinks otherwise, please let us know.
if you want us to
I've,
expand on
I've loved
anything,
getting that. Yeah, or if there's anything that sparked an idea, that was kind of the point. Is really, I'd love to pick that topic up again because I find that fascinating, and I certainly intend to go to more events as my duties and responsibilities allow.
hmm, okay, yeah, I just had an idea. Maybe down the line we can look in a bit more detail about a pack or two,
Mm,
um, and maybe ways of yeah, being more specific about certain things. Anyway, we'll look at that.
mm.
We'll talk
Or
about
sort
that
of
at
best
some point.
practice kind of. Well, that's a
Yeah,
very
maybe, or
grand
just
way of doing it, but
different
yeah,
approaches.
that's a better way of putting it. Yeah, best practice,
Yeah,
very presumptuous. Yeah,
because
cool.
yeah. All right, awesome.
Good chat. Thanks, Greg.
Cheers, Howard. Well, thank you for listening to another episode of The Imperial Truth. As usual, if you have any feedback for the show, please email greg at theimperialtruth.com or find us on the Facebook page or on the Twitters imperial_truth or Instagram at child of fang. You can, yeah, they're all in the show notes. They should all be in the link tree. I need to update the link tree because some people may have seen on social media. We are now an official affiliate for Warhammer merch. So if you want official t-shirts, hats, they sell Joy toys, they sell all kinds of other stuff. I'll be posting out links for them or whatever. If you are looking at some of the cool stuff they do, some of it's not cool, some of it is, then and you're thinking of purchasing, then you can use our link and we get a little bit of a kickback on that, which is all goes into the show. So yeah, if you're interested, I say I will be pushing it a little bit because, as I say, it all helps. it was a roundabout. We mentioned at the end of the show there was a bit of a roundabout topic, way around the topic on the show. We have got next show lined up with some stuff to talk about. But if you have any specific questions, please, about events and things like that, or things you think we need to expand on or got wrong, then please let us know. And next show, it should be fine actually. There should be we should be able to record that. I am then on holiday for a little bit, so there might be a little bit of a disruption there afterwards, but we'll see. We'll deal with it. It's not like this show's bang on release date anyway, so hey ho, it is what it is. But yeah, I think that's plenty of rambling. Yeah, I can't think of anything else to say. So until next time, you have been listening to The Imperial Truth.